Massachusetts, energy on affordability, and progress on affordable housing.
I'm Marjorie Egan. We'll also talk about expansions to birth control coverage, the safety of state shelters, and her just-launched online portal offering resources and job training for laid-off federal workers. Have a question you'd like to pose to the governor? Call or text 877-301-89.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Foreign governments are retaliating against President Trump's new 25% tariffs on imports of aluminum and steel. The European Union says it'll put levies on $28 billion of U.S. goods starting April 1st. Canada is putting tariffs on $21 billion of American imports. Dominic LeBlanc is Canada's Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
This shouldn't surprise anyone. We have been clear that if the Americans took this unreasonable and unjustified step, Canada would respond as Canadians expect their government to respond.
President Trump has offered a variety of shifting explanations for the tariffs. Some of them include restoring U.S. manufacturing jobs, cutting the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., and stopping illegal immigration. Canadian officials say those issues are not significant problems at the U.S.-Canadian border. The White House is requiring science agencies to send them plans for major cuts to their workforces by tomorrow. As NPR's Jonathan Lambert reports, Democrats overseeing those agencies are asking for those plans, too.
Democrats on the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology sent letters to 5 science agencies asking for their reduction in force plans as soon as they're sent to the White House. Quote, "We are extremely concerned that the so-called Department of Government Efficiency will seek to slash and burn core functions," unquote, of agencies, including the National Science Foundation and NASA. They want to evaluate how the proposed cuts could impair agencies' congressionally mandated missions. Mass firings of probationary employees have already disrupted core government work, including around nuclear safety and monitoring bird flu. Jonathan Lambert, NPR News.
President Trump's Mideast envoy, Steve Witkoff, is in Qatar. He is trying to negotiate a new ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The United States is also mediating new talks between Israel and Lebanon. NPR's Daniel Estrin has more from Tel Aviv.
An official familiar with the talks and not authorized to speak publicly tells NPR there are efforts to negotiate the release of more than half of the remaining hostages in Gaza, but that there isn't significant progress yet. Israel believes 24 hostages are still alive in Gaza and held by Palestinian militants. In Lebanon Tuesday, Israeli and Lebanese officials held talks mediated by the U.S. and France. They're trying to resolve long-time border disputes, and they discussed the 5 areas in southern Lebanon where Israeli troops remain despite a recent truce agreement. Israel agreed to release 5 Lebanese detainees as a gesture to Lebanon's new president, with hopes he will rein in the Hezbollah militia. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down nearly 340 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen says she will not seek re-election in 2026. In a statement posted on X this morning, Shaheen says that after careful consideration, she's announcing that she's made the difficult decision to not seek re-election to the Senate in 2026. She adds that there are urgent challenges both here at home and around the world, and while she's not seeking re-election, she's definitely not retiring. Cambridge Police Department has started the process of equipping officers with body cams. In a statement released yesterday, the department says the body body-worn cameras will have a phased rollout after years of debate on how the technology would be implemented. Training is expected to begin this week, and all officers, including command staff, supervisors, detectives, and patrol officers, are expected to be equipped with the body cams by early April. And a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft will launch to the International Space Station today, expected to bring back Butch Wilmore and Needham native Sonny Williams. The two have been at the space station since last June when they performed the first crewed test flight of Boeing's Starliner. The mission was originally intended to last a week, but was extended due to issues with the spacecraft. SpaceX and NASA are currently targeting Crew 10 to launch around 7:26 this evening. In sports, the Celtics host the Thunder at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball, Red Sox play the Twins tonight. It's a 6:05 start. 42 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, celebrating the hard work, commitment, and achievements of the 1 in 5 college students who are parents. More at imaginablefutures.com. This is NPR.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you. And streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At 1 o'clock today, we're going to talk to one of the most popular politicians, I guess you can call him a politician,
Whatever he
in
is.
the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for another edition of Ask the MBTA GM. Phillip Eng is going to be with us. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by the Secretary of Veteran Services of Massachusetts, John Santiago, talking about slashing jobs at the VA. You're not going to be back here on Friday because the library is closed. Good morning, Jim.
And the governor is going to be here in about a minute. She's running about a minute behind. She'll be here for the hour. I have some good news to start the show.
What?
The Dow Jones is not down 1,000 points. It's only down 400 points. So that's really good news. And by the way, did you just see behind you as you were saying hello to people?
Yeah.
I was looking at a new poll that CNN was running. 56% of the American public disapproves of how Trump is handling the economy. It should be 96%, but it is 56%. That's not insignificant, considering that one would argue immigration and he was going to fix the economy on day one were arguably the reasons he was elected president.
Are happier with immigration, and they're not so happy, obviously, with the economy, because he really hasn't talked much about the economy. It's been retribution. The parade of retribution seems to be the president's focus.
I know neither you nor I are economic experts. John Gruber, the head of the economics department at MIT, is going to join us tomorrow and talk about whether Trump really wants there to be a recession. Do you, as a lay person on the economy, as am I, when you watch him change his position every 15 minutes, for example, on tariffs, do you have a sense that he has any idea what he's doing?
I don't know what President Trump thinks. I've given up trying to think what President Trump thinks. But, we're going to talk to the governor in a minute. And we're one of the richest states in the country.
We are.
About what these federal money lack of is going to mean to Massachusetts.
Otherwise known as federal funding cuts, you mean? Thank you very much.
Exactly. And if it you hear these stories about how politicians in red states are pleading with the president not to do to them what he's going to do to us. But, you can't function, I don't think, in a normal way with the education department being gone, VA services being gone.
Why don't you ask the governor that question?
Well, we're going to ask the governor that question, Jim. I'm just going on and on for a few minutes
You
until the
are?
governor gets
Until
here.
she gets here?
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Okay, we're going on and on.
We can also
you want
ask
her to keep going on and on? I think they do. Go ahead, go on and on.
But on lighter notes, we all
Yeah.
saw the Dunkins ad at the Super Bowl, Ben Affleck, et cetera. The governor was on Seth Meyers, and she said it should have been the Dunk Queens that were featured instead.
Well, they
So
did their thing. That's
you can ask
right.
her about that as
we
well.
can. Well, maybe we will. Maybe we won't. So we're told her SUV is pulling up. She'll be here in a second. If you have questions for the governor, you have 3 ways to get them to her. You can call or text us at 877-301-8970, or you can go see our colleague, Nicole. That would be Nicole sitting right over there. Hello, Nicole. And if you go to Nicole and you have a question that is not ridiculous, you have a fairly decent chance of asking it face-to-face to the governor, to Maura Healey.
I also want to point out some breaking news front. Apparently, yesterday I was concerned that Greenland was ready to be sold to the United States. Well, apparently, we're going to talk about this with Juliette Kayyem later in the show. Apparently, Greenland does not want to become part of the United States. They wouldn't mind doing some business with us now.
They don't want to be part of Denmark either,
They don't want to be part of Denmark either. Well, the Danes have not treated them that well. When I was saying yesterday how the New York Times did a big story about people in Greenland being upset with some of the strategies of people in Denmark, but they are not ready to be sold to the United States.
Since you mentioned Greenland, I would say approximately, there are as many people in this room at the Newsfeed Cafe as there are people who live in Greenland. Do you know it's like 50, is it 60,000 people?
It's not very many
In the
people.
last election, 26,000 people voted. And Trump did say a couple of days ago he wanted to do it again. It's a national security, international security kind of thing. In any case.
Well, there are some minerals there, and he's not the first president that's wanted to get Greenland. You know, we did well getting Alaska, and so it's not as wacky as I originally thought it was, his wanting to get Greenland.
Jamie just sent us a note. The whole parliament in Greenland is 31 people. Do you know that, Governor? That the whole parliament in Greenland, joining us now is 31 people, is the governor of the Commonwealth. For Ask the Governor, Maura Healey. She is here till noon, taking her question. And I have to say, in a compliment to the governor before we start, she was originally scheduled for 1 o'clock. When we told her team that there was a conflict with Phil Eng of the T, who moved? The governor of Massachusetts. Maura Healey, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's Phil Eng is fantastic. He's moving trains and getting a lot done. So I'm happy to adjust my schedule.
It's very kind of you.
He is. He's a very popular guy. So we were just talking before you came, Governor, about the federal shortfall we could be facing here in Massachusetts. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about $16 billion that we get from the federal government. So if we don't get that, what does that mean for Massachusetts?
It's devastating. And that's why I'm really glad to see A.G. Campbell. She and her team and AGs around the country are doing a fantastic job fighting the efforts to rip away federal funding from our states, federal funding that Congress already appropriated, that's already been obligated, and that for years has flowed to the states to support education, healthcare, infrastructure, and the like. But I want to be clear with the public. We do not have enough money as a state. We do not have enough money to even begin to make up for the shortfall. Okay? We're talking about $16 billion as part of an annual budget. Our stabilization fund is only $8 billion. That sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, and we have an excellent bond rating as a result. But understand, that's not even enough to get us through what we had to get through back in the 2008 recession. So the scale of this is massive, and it's devastating for states, all states around the country, which is why people need to speak up. There needs to be pressure on Republicans in Congress to stop the madness and to shut this down, shut down this activity, the cutting off of federal funds to states.
Just to delve into some of the details for a moment, you and Marjorie mentioned the $16 billion figure. I think almost 14 billion of it is, or somewhere near that, is Medicaid. And while they say they're not going to cut Medicaid,
Mass Health,
that $880 billion cut that's mandated in the budget framework passed by the House obviously has to include Medicaid, and Trump will pretend like it's waste and inefficiency rather than health care. We know that the education department, if you haven't seen it this morning, people close to 50% of those who work there are being laid off as we speak. And despite what they say, special education, Title I funding for low-income families. So I'm assuming that while you're saying, Governor, obviously we don't have enough money to fill all the holes, you are doing contingency planning about what you do fill when the cuts, whatever they look like, do come. So what is the plan? What are you planning for?
Well, look, we got to be able to do multiple things at once, and that's why it's really tough right now. It's really tough, and I'm incredibly frustrated by Donald Trump and Elon Musk and what they are doing to states all around this country and to this country. And yesterday, it was another $30 million. They thought it was convenient and also not essential for the USDA to continue to provide funds to states so that kids get healthy food in schools. These are the kinds of cuts that we are seeing. The Department of Education, you mentioned, what that means right now, imagine if you're a parent right now in Massachusetts and your child has special education, an after-school program, maybe your child has a reading aid in the classroom, your child is on an IEP and gets services as a result, all of that goes away. All of that goes away. That's federally funded programming. And so you ask what we're doing, Jim. We're trying to both fight back efforts to rip away our funding. We're also trying to advocate strongly for funding, and I'm encouraging people, you've heard me, I'm encouraging people to talk about what's happening to them, and to talk about it all around this country, and to bring the pressure on Congress, whose power, by the way, has been usurped. Trump and Musk have just run roughshod over Congress, and Republicans there seem to be totally fine with it. Well, it's not totally fine when people are hurt every day by this. And then, of course, we've got to evaluate, Jim, in terms of what we prioritize, how we prioritize, and that's ongoing work. But the state of play, I just want folks to know, is very, very serious, very, very serious around this country. We have more federal workers who have been laid off. Imagine that, you guys. There are federal workers who are listening to this call, who provide important services, And by the way, as somebody who prosecuted fraud, waste, and inefficiencies in government, as your Attorney General, I'm all for that. That's not what this is about. It's a systematic attempt to dismantle government, to bring this wrecking ball to it. To what end, I'm not sure, but we know what it's about. And by the way, Jim, yeah, Medicaid is on the chopping block. Medicare is on the chopping block. Social Security is on the chopping block, because you don't cover $4.5 trillion in tax cuts without doing severe damage to those programs.
Two related things, Governor, before we get to the calls, 877-301-8970. We mentioned with Shirley Young from the Globe yesterday the app that you created for fed-up federal workers and laid-off federal workers. How do people find that again?
Yeah, go to mass.gov/fedup. Basically, we wanted to set up a system here so that if you're a federal worker and you were just fired by Donald Trump or Doge, that you have a place where you can go. There's resources to connect you with different job opportunities in state and local government. We're also bringing in the private sector and just some other resources that we can make available. But, my heart goes out to the federal workers who are all across the state. I mean, and people are going to see it, Go to a national park. We've got national parks right here in Boston. See what's happened. Go to a VA. How about the next time you take your dad to the VA? People are gone. People are gone from OSHA doing the inspections on work sites or the inspections out on roads and bridges. People are gone from providing through the National Weather Service what we need to know in terms of storm information. It's very, very serious, and we wanted to be a state that's there for that federal workforce. And there's a lot of talent out there. And again, at the end of the day, what I think about is those federal workers who right now can't make a mortgage payment, can't make a tuition payment, have to worry about how they're going to buy groceries and pay for gas. All of this ripped away from them by Elon Musk and Doge and Donald Trump.
Governor, just one more thing about this. We talked about the $16 billion that comes from the federal government to Massachusetts. So when will we see this money gone, and is there an interim of 1 month, 6 months?
We've already started to see it. I mean, you guys know, AG Campbell went to court a few weeks ago for us because they stopped federal funding. They froze federal funding. And some of that has come back online. A lot of it hasn't come back online. So we're already seeing the harm and the devastation. And by the way, it's not just funding to states. Understand the federal government funds a lot of not-for-profits directly, funds a lot of our cities and towns directly. That's all going away too. I mean, I just think about, just with respect to veterans, for example, Trump's proposed he's going to can 80,000 folks from the Veterans Administration. That includes almost 9,000 people here in Massachusetts who are going to potentially lose their jobs. Now, some have already lost their job. I think about an individual who he's 4-time deployed combat veteran, served in Afghanistan, Iraq. He's a mission-driven guy from Western Mass, and so he has been working at the Veterans Administration in Springfield. He is the first person that people see. And if you've got a veteran who's dealing with mental health issues, PTSD, you may only have one shot of getting that person in the door, saving their life, taking care of them and their family. That guy's been fired. And to add insult to injury, the email that he got from Musk and Donald Trump said that he was fired for, quote, unsatisfactory performance.
Yeah.
Complete lie. So can you imagine You've got a guy who not once, not twice, not three, 4 times went overseas to serve our country. And this is how he is treated? And that is just one example. And, you know, I contrast that. I got a nice letter the other day from a Purple Heart recipient here, and he was thanking me for what we have done as an administration, passing the HERO Act, right? We have the most comprehensive benefits and services for veterans of any state in the country, and I am really proud of that. And at the same time, you've got Donald Trump and Elon Musk firing our veterans. That's the dynamic that we find ourselves in as a state vis-a-vis the federal government right now.
One last question. You, yesterday, I think you were in Springfield talking about tax cuts that you campaigned on, one from the legislature, roughly $1 billion. If there's going to be such a shortfall of an undetermined amount, but obviously well more than $1 billion, have you considered whether or not they should be
Absolutely
postponed
not.
or
I know where you're
done?
going. Absolutely not. We got to
not?
make life more affordable for people. And I am proud of the tax cuts that we gave. And that extra money back in people's pockets is going to help them be able to pay a gas bill that's too high, going to help them be able to buy clothes for their kids and food and you know, maybe the next appliance that they need. And let me tell you what that is about, Jim. The tax cuts that we did, we're talking about tax cuts for seniors. Seniors on fixed incomes. What we did as an administration is we doubled the amount that goes back to seniors. So now seniors are going to get an extra $1,200 back every year. I think that's appropriate and something that we should be doing for our seniors on fixed income. I think about families with kids. We changed it so that a family will get a $440 per child tax credit back. That means, you know, a few years ago, we were just giving as a state a $360 tax credit to families. Now it's up to over $1,300. That's meaningful money to working class and middle income families and low income families. That's money that they need. So we have to continue to do these things.
Isn't there no cap on the number of kids too?
What's that?
Wasn't that another change?
We got rid of the cap. Yeah. You only could take a credit up to 2 kids. If you had more than 2 kids, or if you had someone at home with a disability or a senior dependent at home, you were capped at 2. And so we got rid of the cap. So, you know, this is about making life more affordable, which is also why I announced plans the other day to take on and lower people's gas bills and energy bills. So we've got to continue to work on making life easier and more affordable, especially at a time when Donald Trump is making life harder and more expensive for folks around the country, including in Massachusetts.
We're talking to Governor Healey. She's with us and you till noon.
Leo and Newton, you were on with the governor. Thanks for calling.
Hello, Leo.
Hi. Good morning.
Hi.
Thank you for taking the call.
Sure.
My question for Governor Healey is I would like to hear her reasoning for why Massachusetts has not joined the Blue State Coalition that was suggested by Governor Pritzker, and whether there are any sort of plans to replace missing federal functions like the EPA and FEMA and other things. And just like to know, in addition to what our Attorney General is doing, whether we have any contingency plans to essentially replace all these potentially missing federal functions.
Thank you, Leo.
Leo, so we are working closely with other governors. We are working closely with our Attorney General. We're going to continue to do that and take action that we can to protect the state, to protect our residents, to protect our economies. That's something that my colleagues as governors and I are doing regularly. So that work continues. And I think I addressed earlier what we can and can't do feasibly with respect to funding and making up for funding and lost personnel. One of the reasons I stood up the Fed Up site is because I want to make sure that there is talent out there, and how do you recruit and retain talent, especially people with so much career experience in fields that are really important. And how can we get folks employed here in Massachusetts and put to work here during this time?
You mentioned energy affordability a minute ago, Governor. I know you talked about long-term reform and a short-term sort of credit. We have a bunch of texters. Why is the DPU giving Eversource huge increases, 27% in November? They should be investigated. Making life more affordable means raising my heating costs by 30%. And we talked ad nauseum on the show about this incredible deal a few weeks ago where the utility companies were going to give people a cut in March or April and then make them pay it back, one with interest, which they rescinded. What's your plan? What are you going to do here?
So we came out the other day with a strong plan to get at issues of energy affordability. So our plan basically is to be able to reduce people's energy costs by about $6 billion over the next 5 years. So we took action the other day. I don't have control over everything, but what is within my power, we acted on. And we think that that action is going to save people a total of $6 billion in Massachusetts over the next 5 years.
What would that mean for the average ratepayer?
What's that?
What would $6 billion mean for the average ratepayer?
So it'll mean you're going to get a $50 rebate back on your next bill next month. You're going to get 10% off your bills for the next 2 months, and you're right, without interest. And we're working on ways to eliminate certain programs that show up on your energy bill. I asked my Secretary of Energy to go through line by line all of our bills and figure out where we have surplus funds in certain accounts that we've collected from utilities and ratepayers so that we can give those back to ratepayers to provide some relief. And we're also going to propose some legislation because I think that there may be different ways that we can go about the purchase of power and the ways that we can smooth out some of the volatility that we're seeing. I'll also say this, this is happening at a time where we're supposed to be getting hydro down from Canada. That's going to lower our bills. Trump's put a tax on that through his tariffs. So, again, Donald Trump, while I'm trying to drive down energy costs, which are high, he's doing things that are only going to make it more expensive. It's also why it's really important that we continue with the wind industry here, because that is energy that can flow, and we don't have to be as reliant on the volatility of international markets when it comes to oil and gas, which is, how we find ourselves in this position now. We already have gas, and we'll continue to have gas in our state, but gas alone isn't going to help do it. We need more energy coming into Massachusetts, and hydro, solar, wind, every option needs to be on the table.
We're getting several texts from parents of kids that are special ed kids.
A lot of texts.
Rod from Salem says he's got a disabled child. He's worried about will he lose paraprofessionals in the classroom, physical therapy, speech therapy. Another mother says she's got a 9-year-old with autism. Will that child lose his IEP? When is this going to happen? That kind of thing.
Yeah, imagine. This is the worry that so many parents are having to experience right now. That is the reality. And I don't have an answer for that because I don't know what exactly the Trump administration is going to do. We know what they intend to do around education. They intend to dismantle the Department of Education. Now,
where that money comes from.
They can't, technically, only Congress can abolish and get rid of the Department of Education. But what can they do? What they're doing right now. Firing half of the staff at the Department of Education. Slow walking and not actually sending the money through to our states and to our cities and towns. So it's a very challenging situation. And that woman and her story is a story that hundreds of millions of people around this country could be telling because, that's what federal education funding means. It does mean whether or not, imagine your child is born and how many have had early intervention services. Mm-hmm. That's federally funded. That goes away. So the cruelty of all this is just, it's sort of hard to fathom, but unfortunately that's the reality that we're living in. We're going to continue, though, to that mom, know that you live in a state that is number one for education, healthcare, innovation. We were ranked the best state to have a baby, to raise a family, to live if you're a woman. We have some of the cleanest drinking water in the entire country. We're among the safest states. So we're going to continue with the investments that we've made. And that's why in my budget, which is funded, Jim, by revenues that we expect to come in, we'll continue to fund the programming, early education and childcare. We've expanded by the end of this year, universal pre-K to all of our gateway cities. We're going to continue to fund a really stepped up effort around literacy in our schools, K to 12. And we're going to continue to fund efforts just generally across the board to provide as much support as we can
But the
to
issue
our
basically
schools.
is if you lose all this money from the Department of Education, $16 billion in federal, the state of Massachusetts does not have the money to make that up.
We
So
don't
that's
begin
the
to have
issue.
the funds.
Yeah, okay.
And that's just for 1 year, right? That's $16 billion is just 1 year of federal funding, which is why this is so serious. And that doesn't even begin to account for, I mentioned not-for-profits. There's additional funding that comes from the federal government. Think about the funding that comes from something called the National Institutes of Health. NIH funds medical research around this country, and it's done so for the last 80 years. And probably as a result, it's led to the greatest explosion of science in centuries, right? Donald Trump wants to cut that. Elon Musk wants to cut that. And that's $3.5 billion to Massachusetts that flows to our research institutions, our teaching hospitals, our colleges and universities that they want to take away.
That's apart from the $16
That's
billion.
apart from, okay? And that's coming directly at our lifeblood, which is life sciences. We are the global hub for life sciences. And it kills me. And it is, again, just hard to imagine what these guys are doing. But this is what they're doing. They're threatening, they're taking away that funding. Again, the AGs had to go to court. Thank you, AG Campbell. And they got an order that said, no, you can't take away NIH funding from the states. That said, the money's not flowing. They're not funding us. And so these institutions have been put in a really hard position. And right now, just down the street, we've got people, because of what Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Doge have done, we've got people who are not getting cancer treatments through clinical trials right now. They've been shut down. We've got the Chinese government on campuses here in Massachusetts recruiting postdocs saying, hey, Donald Trump's taken away your funding through NIH. Come to China. We'll give you an office. We'll give you a lab. We'll give you 90 staff. Okay? So for a guy who has an America First agenda, he's given it all to China. And that really has an impact on our Massachusetts economy because well, you may not be a life science company or a life science researcher or institution. Your business or livelihood, your job, is very much affected by this industry and by what this research spurns. Think about anybody in a law firm with intellectual property and patents. Think about all the construction workers that actually build out all of our offices and laboratories and research space. Think about manufacturers, right? And folks who work for manufacturers around Massachusetts who build and then supply the parts to all these places. This is really, really serious. And it's a serious hit to our economy, serious threat to our economy in Massachusetts. And it's a absolutely devastating human cost when you think about right now. You've got somebody who now or might need a cure or a treatment for Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and they want to take that away. That's what's happening. That is what the Trump-Musk administration is doing right now. And I don't think that that's what most people voted for. I don't think they saw that coming. But that's what's happening. Just like they didn't see 25%, 50% tariffs on our friends to the north. I mean, what have the Canadians done to us? I mean, maybe some hockey games, right? We get upset about that. Okay, friendly rivalry. But what has Canada done to us other than be our largest, most significant trading partner? And because of what Donald Trump and Musk are doing, prices continue to go up. There's no capital deployment right now. If you're a business in this country, where are you going to invest? Where are you going to build out infrastructure? You can't act with any certainty, right? So it just has such a drain on our entire economy. It's why you see the stock market tanking, and I just think, we're going to continue to see a lot more hurt and a lot more harm in the days and weeks ahead because rather than course correcting, what Donald Trump seems to do is just double down. And that's where we are.
Let's take some calls.
Sue in Winchester, you're on with Governor Healey.
Hi, Sue.
Hi. Hi, Governor. Could you explain to me a little bit better the seniors discount that you're putting forth for taxes?
Absolutely. And Sue, the best thing you could do is stay on the line and give your telephone number to the team here, and we'll have somebody give you a call directly so that you're able to take advantage of that tax credit.
Sue, don't go away. We'll get your contact info and we'll give it to the governor's office.
We did a training yesterday.
Thank you,
we were out,
Oops.
in Springfield, but a lot of these agencies are out giving trainings right now to families. We happen to be at an early ed child care center where a lot of families come and go, so that they could be. We want to get the word out. It's no good having a tax credit if you're not able to take advantage of it, and so we're trying to do that also through our local senior centers and other agencies. But stay on the line, Sue, and we'll take care of you at least.
Thank you, Sue.
We're taking a quick break. Governor Healey will be with us till the top of the hour. You are listening to Ask the Governor on Boston Public Radio. Our number is 877-301-8970. We'll take as many texts and calls as we can. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, the Tony-winning revival of Parade is in Boston. The musical dramatizes the real-life tragedy and trial of Leo Frank. He was a Jewish man from Brooklyn who found himself in Atlanta in 1913, only to become subject to rampant anti-Semitism. The lead actors of the show join me. From there, it's the cabaret queen Meow Meow, who's bringing her outsized originality to Boston this weekend. It's all here on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Safety Insurance, offering auto insurance policies designed to help for when the worst happens. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms. And Boston Ballet, presenting Winter Experience. This program of dancing is full of grace, athleticism, and artistry. On stage beginning March 20th through March 30th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering short courses on critical topics led by world-class faculty. Professionals can get up to speed on AI, innovation, cybersecurity, and operational strategy. More at executive.mit.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. At 1 o'clock, we will have Ask the General Manager of the T. That'd be Phil Eng. But right now, we are continuing with Ask the Governor. As Maura Healey joins us and you for the hour. The numbers, actually, the lines are so full, but it's 877-301-8970. Governor, before we continue, you wanted to add one thing about the tax cuts.
Yeah, tax season, go to mass.gov/tax cuts. Okay, mass.gov/tax cuts. Everything's listed there that you and your family can take advantage of in your tax filing this season.
Great. John in Rockport, you're on with the governor. Hi.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Marjorie. Thank you so much for your show.
Thanks.
Governor, it's a pleasure to meet with you and talk to you.
Nice to meet you, John.
I am a 75-year-old married man to a former but now retired man. He worked for the VA, so as his spouse, I get all of its spousal benefits and particularly health insurance. Now, I have no doubt that the next act that's going to fall is on same-sex marriage. But over the past couple of days, they've been talking about nullifying it, and I'm not quite sure what that means. And the fact that the state will still recognize it, do they have an opportunity to actually go back and cancel people who are in existing benefits?
Well, John, first of all, I'm glad you called in. Can they try to do something like that? Sure. They've tried to do so many things that are illegal and just wrong. And, I'm not going to tell you that they're not going to try to do that to you and to your husband or to others who are in the same boat. What I will tell you is that you've got a license that comes from the state of Massachusetts. We will honor that. We will always continue to honor that and support marriage equality for everyone. And you will see a fight. If they come after you and your husband and target you, no doubt there's going to be litigation against that because your husband served, he earned it. You earn it yourself as a spouse, and you're entitled to that benefit as any other spouse is entitled to in this country. And that's actually the law. That's actually the federal law. But again, this is unfortunately a president in Trump who doesn't seem to follow the law or obey the law. But I'm glad you're in touch, John. And why don't you stay on the line so that we can get your information and follow up, because I know our veteran services folks are going to want to know your story and be able to make sure we're providing as much support to you and others in your situation as we can.
John, thank you for the call. Speaking of who is the law and LGBTQ plus issues, you were in the room when Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, and Donald Trump had that back and forth around Maine and trans athletes in sports, and it ended with Trump not only threatening her political future, but also saying, I am the federal law. In a related note, Seth Moulton took a ton of heat when he said, I don't want my two daughters run over in the playing field by male or formerly male athletes. At the time, you said he was playing politics with people. Since you said that, and since he said that, a lot of leading Democrats, some leading Democrats, including the governor of California, have essentially said the exact same thing as Seth Moulton has said, a couple of members of Congress and the Democratic Party. Do you feel any differently about it a month or two later than you did when you immediately responded?
No. Look, I think people are playing into, let's know this has been the game. This has been the Republican game, is to pick a really discrete issue. The number of transgender people in this country is very small. The number of transgender athletes in this country is even smaller, and blow that up into something when what we should be focusing on is how and where is Trump going to deliver on his campaign promise, which was to lower costs, which is not what he's doing. I've also spoken about diversity and inclusion, Jim, and I stand by it. I am the product of Title IX. I am the product of a law that said girls and boys should be treated the same when it comes to resources and education. As a result, I was able to have a great public school education. I was able to play sports. Had I not had that opportunity in high school, I would not have been able to go and play college ball or have a professional career. And I can tell you, I would not be governor today were it not for those leadership opportunities and experiences that I had as a result of a federal anti-discrimination law that says we don't exclude women from the table. We don't exclude people of color from the table. It's the way it should be in government. It's the way it should be and has been in our military. And it's the way it has been to success in our business community. So let's get back to saying the words and make people say and explain why they oppose diversity, why they oppose inclusion. Antics of more discussion or platforming of Charlie Kirk, to me, that's not what I'm about, okay? As governor in this state, I believe in diversity. I believe that we should continue to have women and people of color at the table. I believe it is wrong to exclude somebody because they have a disability. It is wrong to exclude somebody because of their sexual orientation. That's not what Massachusetts is about. And actually, under federal law, that's not what this country is about. So let's move on. Let's move on. And more people want to make it into something, and you're just playing into the hands of exactly what they want to distract everybody from the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts that they're going to want to jam through by cutting Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare. Period.
Yeah, but on the DEI front, while right where you're standing, the Attorney General, the Mayor of Boston, and you could not have been stronger in defense of DEI. You're surrounded by corporations, universities, nonprofits that are running for the exits as fast as they possibly can. What do you say to them?
I don't see that. And I think, unfortunately, the term DEI, it's become completely caricatured, right? Which is why I don't even say the word DEI. I say what it is: diversity, inclusion, equity. All right. So, I see it in practice. Businesses are actually continuing with these things. Why? Because it turns out studies have shown that businesses that have more diverse representation in C-suites or around a board table have a better bottom line economically. And, I see that that's what people are doing. There's been understandable talk about it because he's threatening every which way action, withholding of funds and the like. But the programming has, in my view, it absolutely should continue. It's going to continue here in Massachusetts, and I'll continue to support our institutions, colleges, and universities, and our businesses that continue to support this programming. It's what made our country who we are today.
Governor, several people have texted. I can't imagine you could do this, but so many people are wondering. Since the federal government is refusing to give us this $16 billion, can the citizens of Massachusetts refuse to pay their federal taxes back to the federal government?
A lot of people asking that question.
Yeah,
actually.
this must be somewhere online or
Isn't
something like that.
Isn't it sad that it's come to this? that we're even having these conversations. I think what people need to do is continue to speak out, call on Republicans in Congress around this country to take action. They're the ones who can stop this right now.
But do Republicans care what people in Massachusetts think?
Sure they do.
They do?
Sure they do.
Okay.
They care if they have to answer phones, repeatedly. And if people, in their districts, it matters more. But I think people got to understand that, make those calls. Make those calls and write letters and talk about what's going on. And the other thing to do, I think, is social media. Share social media. I love the social media, not of politicians, but of everyday Americans. There are a lot of people who are speaking up, who are talking about how these actions are affecting them. Share that stuff, right? That's one way to get stuff out there. And unfortunately, there's a lot of really good material, good examples that people can be sharing to get across this message of why what is happening is so wrong, why it's going to hurt so many Americans, why it's going to hurt our competitive advantage in the world, and why it's going to crush us as an economy. I mean, a few months ago, Joe Biden leaving office, agree with him or not, from all my understanding, conversations with economists, we were on pretty good financial footing, And look at where we are now, where Trump is basically agreeing that we're more likely headed for a recession, and he doesn't seem to be having a problem with that. He terms it just a temporary disturbance, but that temporary disturbance is going to wreak havoc with lives and businesses and industry in our country, and that's just not good.
James in Ipswich, you're on with Maura Healey, Governor of Massachusetts. Welcome.
Thank you for me. Hopefully it's okay. Change the topic. I want to say that my son was in Reading. All of a sudden, yay.
Hey, James, we have a horrible connection. We're going to put you on hold. We'll hope you have a better connection in a minute. We'll take another call, and we'll try you one more time. Where do you want us to go next there? Donna in Worcester, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Governor Healey.
Hi.
I'm a longtime advocate for Bridgewater State Hospital for proper care and proper placement. And I have worked with I have read carefully every DLC report in the last 10 years, and they're working for the protection of people with the most serious mental illness. So a couple of things that are a takeaway is that they say that Bridgewater State Hospital is not safe for anyone, and it's incumbent upon the Commonwealth to place Bridgewater State Hospital from the Department of Corrections, who are not mental health experts, into the Department of Mental Health, where they say...
Donna, can I ask you to ask a question? What's your question for the governor, please?
Well, I would like to know if she would support how she could help us support getting Bridgewater State Hospital into the Department of Mental Health. We have 3 bills pending,
Understood.
and we've been working very hard.
Let's hear what she has to say. Thank you, Donna.
Don or Donna?
Donna, I'm sorry. Donna.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Hey, thanks for the call. Look, as governor, I want to make sure we're doing everything that we can to provide support to those who need services, and that includes in mental health, which is why my budget has proposed more assistance, more resources for mental health than any administration in the past. We've opened up over the last 2 years 31 community behavioral health centers that work that are in locations where people can go and get sort of immediate services. It keeps them out of hospitals, actually. I mean, that's one of the things we want to do is meet people sooner where they are, get them care, get them treatment. And that's what these community behavioral health centers do. People can go there, they can stay there for a week, they can stay there for a couple weeks, and get them squared away so that they are less likely to have to be hospitalized. But, this is work that we're continuing to do, Donna. It's also very much supported through Medicaid funding, some of it, and another reason why we can't, as a state or any state, afford the cuts that Trump and Republicans in Congress are looking to bring forward.
Donna, thanks for your call. Good luck.
Governor, we talked a lot about the MBTA communities law. It's faced some legal challenges in places like Milton. Now it's facing them in Rentham and stuff, and the idea is to be able to build more affordable housing. There's been a lot written lately about one of the problems here in Massachusetts is that everything takes so long, and that these local rules that came in to try to give localities more control over this are really hampering what we're doing here. And it could be another 10 years at the rate we're going before we can get any of these proposals through with fighting in the courts and stuff. What do you think about that? The Globe had this line about we need to swing for the fences and stop putting up with local obstructionism, or we're never going to solve our housing problem in time.
Well, look, we've got the MBTA communities law in place. It was something that was passed bipartisan, signed into law by a Republican governor, and one that this governor is enforcing. And the good news is 119 communities are already complying with the MBTA Communities Act. They're bringing more housing online. We've got thousands more units that have come online in just the last year alone. Our economic future and our livelihood, our growth as a state, depends on our ability to build more homes. When I knew this was an issue when I became governor 2 years ago. What I did do that had not been done before is ask my team to study this and come back to me with a statewide housing plan. Let's identify how many homes we need to build, and let's break it out by region. We announced that a couple weeks ago. It's 220,000 that we need to build over the next 10 years. We have served up a menu of options through some of the commissions and recommendations that have come out of commissions about things that we can do right away to bring more housing online. I got passed this $5 billion Affordable Homes Act last year, which is providing money to incent development, both affordable homes and also market rate homes. It's a range of things we can do. I'm getting a lot of calls from contractors talking about the number of calls they're getting from people who want ADUs. They've got a property that they can now, they've got an attached garage and they want to turn it into housing. They can
do that now, right?
And because of the legislation that I signed, people are able to do that. And so it's going to take a range of things. It's going to take a number of different things to get there, but we are full steam ahead on getting this housing built out. And that's why we've said to cities and towns, work with us on this, because it's just it's the most important thing that we can do as a state.
When you say thousands of houses online, what does online mean?
I mean built out, developed. Yeah.
So they're going to be built soon?
They're already built.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, and in fact, the tax package that I was talking about earlier, last year that tax package gave a tax credit to developers who were willing to build housing in gateway cities. And because of that tax cut and what we did, we have increased housing production in those gateway cities by 600% in just 1 year alone. So there's a way to do that, and there's a way to bring more units online, or what I'm saying is make available. Some of it's new construction, some of it is rehabilitation of existing properties, and the like. But
not yet on the MBTA routes. I mean, maybe I missed something, but not yet the ones that are supposed to be right next to the MBTA, the communities, MBTA community law. Those aren't built yet, are they?
What's that?
The ones that this Baker law about having the MBTA have the. Yeah. If you're near the MBTA, you're going to put the zoning allowing the affordable housing. Have those been built yet? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, those are already in process. I mean, as I say, 119 communities already have zoned for, and we've got some development opportunities underway. We've got a handful of people who are a handful of towns who are opposing that. That's in court. The AG's been very clear in defending that, but. the MBTA Communities Law is just one of any number of policy initiatives that are out there, in addition to the funding that comes through the Affordable Homes Act and the changes that we made in the tax package that have already brought housing online.
Hey, Governor,
we've got a long ways to go, but that housing is coming.
We only have a couple minutes left, but we're getting a ton of texts as well about the death of Enrique Delgado Garcia, who was the young state trooper who died during training. We asked the Attorney General, there's an editorial about this in the Globe today, and we asked the Attorney General about a week ago, what's the status of the investigation by the former prosecutor she appointed? And she said, it's going, I can't tell you anything about it. But the Globe also mentions you initiated a separate investigation asking the head of the state police to conduct an independent review of all academy programs and training. It's been 6 months, as I assume people know, but as the Globe says, but the independent review, meaning the state police heads review, is not even yet underway. Why?
It is underway.
Well, they say it's not. That's not true?
That's inaccurate. And also, Colonel Noble's already made the changes and with respect to training and
what besides
programming
boxing?
there. But
what has he done?
the report, that look is underway. We'll get you more information about that. But I know there was an RFP process that was just completed. We wanted it done right, and we certainly, I think everybody's interested in seeing as soon as possible what the results of the special investigation.
But what change? I know they've ended boxing. What other changes has he implemented while he's doing this investigation? He being Noble.
Well, he's got a crew hired to do this. They did an RFP process so that that now is underway.
Okay. Before you go, another question that amazingly has gotten a ton of text. Please ask the governor when we're going to get a WNBA team in Boston. That appears to be a major desire, and it's a break from the pain. How about it? What are we doing?
I know. I would love to have a team here. Yesterday. And I've said that I'll do anything I can as governor to support those efforts. I think there's a great market and a ton of interest here.
Yeah, I know did they just add Toronto? Am I right about that? I think they gave a franchise to Toronto. I think it was.
Vancouver, I think.
Was it? Okay.
Excuse me.
Somewhere in the 51st state, they decided to. Thank you very much.
We should have one in Boston. We're a great market for it.
I would agree with
one
that.
last thing too, that we didn't have a chance to get to them, but so many people calling about their electric bills or gas bills. Where should they go if they are beside themselves over the heating costs? Is there a place that they should take their
if they want
to? If they're upset, they think they're getting overcharged. They're all upset about their heating bills and their electric bills.
Yeah, we'll put that information up online. I mean, we have some of it probably up right now through mass.gov. You can go on there and see. But that money will be coming back in the form of a rebate and discounts in April and May.
Governor, it's good to see you. I know we're not Seth Meyers, but we're as good as we can be. Let me tell you that.
Good to see you all.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Governor Healey. That was Governor Maura Healey, who's kind enough to join us every month, and we really appreciate it.
Support for GBH comes from you. You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. Anytime you're looking to learn something new about the cosmos, or just need a little space, GBH is in your orbit. Start streaming Nova and all your other favorite programs now on the PBS app.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead of Hour 2, Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We'll check in with Jared Bowen, GBH's Executive Arts Editor, about the Mass Cultural Council, about a bleak state of affairs for local artists getting by on sub-minimum wages or not getting by. We'll also talk about how Hollywood is responding to the return of Donald Trump.
I'm Marjorie Egan, then it's national security expert Harvard's Juliette Kayyem on a possible month-long ceasefire for the war in Ukraine. Plus, we'll get Juliette's thoughts on national security risks posed by the Trump administration, gutting the National Weather Service, and
in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The European Union is pushing back against President Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum that took effect today, escalating tensions about a global trade war. Rebecca Rossman reports the EU has announced countermeasures targeting up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods to start at the beginning of April.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the EU regrets Trump's decision, calling the tariffs bad for business and even worse for consumers. As part of its response, Brussels is placing 25% tariffs of its own on U.S. exports, including bourbon, jeans, and Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Von der Leyen states the EU is acting to protect itself, but remains open to negotiations. The Trump administration argues the tariffs are necessary to protect U.S. metal producers from what it calls surging exports from foreign competitors. But with global markets already on edge, concerns about a deepening trade war and possible recession in the United States are growing. Rebecca Rossman, NPR News, Paris.
Well, it's now up to the U.S. Senate to decide where it stands on a stopgap measure that would keep government funding through the end of September. Failure to do so means a partial government shutdown after Friday night. Senate Democrats such as Chris Coons of Delaware are weighing the options to back a continuing resolution they've opposed or let a shutdown happen or, as he believes, continue.
A government shutdown is already underway, and it's being done piecemeal, without planning, without any kindness or decency to folks who've served veterans and help keep our nation safe and help run our Social Security agency. So first, the argument for not giving President Trump and Elon Musk more power to do more bad, to move money around at will, to shut down more organizations, and to give it our vote, our support, I think is clear.
Coons speaking with NPR's Morning Edition. Consumer prices in the U.S. were up 2.8% in February compared to the same month a year earlier. NPR's Scott Horsley says that's less than what economists were expecting.
Prices rose just 0.2% between January and February, a smaller increase than the month before and less than forecasters had expected. Falling gasoline prices last month helped keep the overall inflation rate in check. Grocery prices were also flat, although egg prices continue to climb at a double-digit pace. Egg prices have been soaring as avian flu weighs on the nation's flock of egg-laying hens. Stripping out volatile food and energy prices, so-called core inflation over the last 12 months was 3.1%. The cooling inflation rate should come as a relief to watchdogs at the Federal Reserve. Nevertheless, the central bank is expected to hold interest rates steady when policymakers meet next week. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. Federal authorities armed with search warrants were in Framingham yesterday where they discovered a black market doctor's office operating inside of a large apartment complex. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, 4 Brazilian nationals have been arrested and charged with selling illegal prescription drugs to the Portuguese-speaking community. Once inside the apartment at the Green at 990, which advertises itself as a luxury apartment community, law enforcement found an examination and consultation area, large quantities of controlled substances, and used syringes, as well as mislabeled drugs that were imported from Brazil. Officials at Harvard University say they're staying the course when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That move comes as many American universities pull their DEI programming in response to threats from the new Trump administration. The Crimson reports that less than 2 weeks ago, Harvard President Alan Garber voiced support for the merits of diversity in his opening remarks at the university's 3rd annual Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Forum. And a mother North Atlantic right whale and her calf have been spotted in Cape Cod Bay, marking the first mother-calf sighting of the season. Observation was made by aerial observers at the Center for Coastal Studies. According to the center, North Atlantic right whales are critically endangered with an estimated 372 remaining. Cape Cod Bay serves as an important feeding ground with over 80 right whales already observed in the bay this season. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indiana University, establishing the IU Launch Accelerator for Biosciences to drive healthcare discoveries and train the next generation of innovators. More at go.iu.edu/IULab.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At 1 o'clock today, backed by popular demand, Phillip Eng, the MBTA of the GM of the MBTA, is going to be here taking our questions and yours. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Services, Dr. John Santiago from Massachusetts, and he is going to talk about these thousands of jobs slashed at the VA. We're not going to be back here on Friday because the library is closed for the day. Hello again, Jim.
I just want to say one more thing from that Trump poll that I was mentioning to you before, the CNN's poll. His lowest approval is on tariffs.
Right.
And interestingly, what is he talking about nonstop?
Tariffs.
But tariffs,
Yeah.
which is really, I think an interesting thing for a guy who cares a lot about poll numbers. In any case, we're now joined by GBH's Executive Arts Editor, host of The Culture Show. That'd be Jared Bowen. Welcome, Jared.
So, Jared, I was really stunned by the story about a lack of living wage in the arts community. Talking about dancers making like $7,000 a year.
Well, it's not completely surprising. I think this is something that we've known for a long time, but the Massachusetts Cultural Council has just issued the Cultural Asset Inventory Study, which is showing what we have known, is that there is the long-time notion of starving artists is true here in Massachusetts. This comes on the heels of another study from the Art Table in 2022 and another one in the Berkshires from a couple of years ago that shows that despite the arts being a robust industry in terms of the revenue generated, when you think about $930 million going into the state between wages and benefits, that artists are making less than the living wage, which in Massachusetts is $60,000. The median income for artists is $49,000, but then you have a lot of people who are doing gig work, like photographers, like dancers, like other performers, and sometimes they're making as little as $7,000. So I think that we're hitting an inflection point right now, especially as we look at what is coming out of Washington. And we know that money is going to be cut off from the NEH and the NEA, so grants that help these small organizations that are able to pay some of these salaries. This is probably going to go away in a number of circumstances, on top of these organizations not being able to afford to pay artists. So there needs to be a new funding mechanism for the arts.
Which might be what?
This is what needs to be figured out, because I think if you talk to the philanthropic community, they're telling you they're doing as much as they can to support already. I think we now understand that, we just heard from the governor, she has increased the budget for the arts here in Massachusetts, so she's doing what she can in the administration on the state level.
She also talked about billions of dollars of holes in the budget because of the federal funding cuts. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on that as well.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. So I think all of the reliable forms of funding no longer will, or to some degree, no longer exist right now, and I think we can count on not existing in the future. So what does this mean for the arts sector? So this is the value in a report like this to understand this.
I wondered, we have a lot of musicians in here. Every Friday we have Live Music Friday, and we've talked a lot about how many of these musicians are unionized, so they can play at all these, the BSO, they can play in quartets, they can play with the orchestra and Boston Lyric Opera, whatever it is. Would that matter in these other areas in the arts?
I think it's a small sector of musicians who are actually in part of unions that get these kinds of protections. So what it comes down to is artists that in some capacity can afford to do this. Either they can afford to do it because they've chosen a lifestyle that doesn't need a lot of income, or they're only doing it when their other main jobs allow this. We saw this during COVID when all of the jobs shut down and artists suddenly realized that their contracts, actors often will build out a contract or series of contracts for the year going forward. Once they knew they had no reliable source of income, and who knew when that was going to be coming back, who knew when the pandemic would lift and restrictions would lift, they just walked away from the arts entirely and went into other fields or went back to school. So this is, I think, what we're facing, and we talk about this all the time. We are a country that doesn't necessarily support its arts and community, and we are going to have to answer for that.
I know you are probably more concerned about, know better about it than I, but ages ago, when there started to be financial constraints on public schools, the first thing to go were arts and things like that. And I fear, particularly after talking to the governor for an hour about this, that the first thing that has potential to go, is we have to provide health care to low-income people, so we have to fill Medicaid holes. If food stamps are cut back, we obviously have to do that too. And while I'd like to think that Margie and I are almost as much a defender of the local arts scene as you are, they're going to be on the cutting block, don't you think?
Absolutely, and I also understand it, but it needs reshaping of thinking, because of course you don't want to take people's livelihoods away, you don't want to take their medications away or their homes away, but I think there is a way to integrate the arts into all of these sectors. This is what I've learned in all these years of coverage, is that the arts are entwined in all parts of our lives, and not just the touchy-feely parts, but they do stimulate our brains, they do work together with the sciences, and they do fire neurons in different ways. So I think just the way that artists can help us find a way to develop housing and create new innovations in all sectors of society, because they tend to think a little bit more cleverly and differently, that maybe there's a way to make this happen by folding it into other sectors.
One last thing is the Mass Cultural Council, which did this research and put out the report, I didn't read the report itself, I just read a report about the report. Is the next step the fixes that they're going to propose, or is just they're putting it out there and good luck?
I think that they are trying to figure out, I think basically they're using this as a signal. Michael Bobbitt, who is head of the Massachusetts Cultural Council, wants to use this as evidence to go, his job is to go up to the State House and have people advocate and support the arts.
So the entire country, or much of the entire country, is on bended knee to Donald Trump, it would seem. The Wall Street Journal's got a piece today about how Hollywood is pivoting to programming for Trump's America. They're putting on reruns of The Apprentice. This is going to be on Amazon. Amazon's already spent, I think, $40 million for the Melania documentary.
Not spent, paid her.
Paid her, excuse me.
$40 million.
Yeah, that's right. Duck Dynasty on A&E, cop shows, which kind of were out of favor for a while after the George Floyd murder. Cop shows are back. So, Shifting Gears? This is a new show with Tim Allen?
Yeah, it's a Tim Allen show. So I think there are a number of things at play. So like anything, this is all part of the pendulum. The country was so focused on progressive issues, and you just spent a lot of time talking with the governor about DEI issues. Hollywood embraced this. They were trying to change their own internal mechanisms because there wasn't a lot of diversity behind the scenes in terms of writers' rooms and directors. So there was a shift to make that happen. But I think what Hollywood has now looked at, they looked at the election, they looked at the country, they looked at what what a lot of the population in the country wants and how the population of the country lives, and we're seeing that reflected in the content now that they're producing. And this is why you were seeing the return of the cop shows. This is why you're seeing a show like Tim Allen's, which is, I think, the Roseanne of the 1980s, which is depicting a working, in that case, it was depicting a working class America that you didn't often see on television necessarily, espousing the issues that working class America was dealing with. You're also seeing a lot of Christian shows right now. There's a lot of investment between Amazon and Netflix in things having to do biblical stories and things of a Christian nature. We just talked on the Culture Show last week about Disney incorporating a Christian character onto its new animated show. This is also the same show that removed the trans identity of one of its characters. So there's this definite shift, but I think it also does reflect the population. I don't think you can say that you can't have one without the other, and I think there's a place for all of it.
I just wonder if their Christian character is going to be in favor of eliminating all the programs for the poor, because it seems though the people with the crosses around their neck down in Congress are the ones that are anti-poor. I don't know where that fits with Christianity. You know, I always get a kick out of that hypocrisy.
Well, I think in this animated show they don't go that far. But I recently watched Landman, which is on Paramount. Paramount it's a Billy Bob Thornton show.
Oh.
Is it Taylor Sheridan? I always forget if it's Tyler or Taylor Sheridan. And this is a show that takes place in Texas, and it's about a oil drilling community, and people doing the hard work. And every once in a while, there's a sudden diatribe about, okay, oil is where it's at, gas is where it's at, windmill energy should go out the window, and then we go back to John Hamm and Billy Bob Thornton doing their things.
No.
But this is about this community. And I have to say, so I've done several cross-country trips. It's been a while since I've done one. But when you're driving through the country and you see how a lot of people live, and you can be on one stretch of road or highway for a long time, and you see many churches and many iterations of churches on that highway, you understand this is a community who also wants to see itself reflected.
I think, by the way, I happen to totally agree with you. If they want to produce a show and there's an audience, as long as it's not hateful, go for it. I think getting rid of the trans character was insane. But the part that is not defensible is they are moving, Hollywood appears, much of it, not all of it, moving as quickly to run away from DEI as, the governor just said she's not seeing it here. With all due respect to the governor, I'm seeing it here. And Hollywood's doing the exact same thing, which suggests to me, what we've said 1,000 times, if you're running so fast when nothing has happened to cause you to do it, except Donald Trump has made a pronouncement, you probably didn't believe that much in the principle to begin with. That is happening in Hollywood, right?
Yeah, and we have the evidence, because we're recognizing already from surveys last year that there are fewer actors of color in streaming and pictures and movies and television, the same with directors of color. So it's going back again. But I've been saying what I heard the governor say too. I just don't understand how this doesn't work as a sound business practice. Wouldn't your goal be to get everybody under the tent so you can have all of the audience rather than dividing up only portions of the audience? This is the part of Hollywood that I don't understand right now, why you're trying to alienate some of your audiences. Go back to the Disney show, which was just removing this trans character. It was, from what I read, the script was a relatively benign line about this trans character trying to understand themselves. Have that in the show. I think it would probably go over a lot of kids' heads, maybe not all of them, and then they can talk about this with their family. I don't think there was a lot of harm there, but to just completely erase this, you're alienating an entire audience.
But with all due respect, what they say is the following. They're more scared of Trump than they are loyal to their customers. They don't say that. And what they say is what everybody who dumps DEI said, saying, I'm not dumping DEI. I'm not dumping DEI. What are you talking about? We're fully committed. So it's BS.
Well,
they hope with the exception of that minister in Atlanta, good for him, who's leading that 40-day boycott of Target for their BS, originally getting rid of LGBTQ stuff from the shelves and then retreating from DEI. There isn't like an organized movement to say we're not going to stand for this. So the answer is their customers are not speaking with their dollars for the most part, and that's why they get away with it, right?
I mean, it's kind of difficult to know what's happening because we do know that some companies, I think you can put Apple in this category, are sort of rearranging the language around DEI. They're trying to keep the intention, and we know that other outlets are trying to do that too, whereas some have very boldly acquiesced to Trump and have dialed it back.
We're talking to Jared Bowen.
So let's talk about something fun.
Yeah.
Tell us about Gaze to the Stars.
And talk fast because it's going away in 2 days.
So I got a preview of this last night when it was a surprise when I was driving home because I thought it was going to start tonight and go through just March 14th. But Gaze to the Stars is an initiative. It's this art installation that's coming out of MIT by Banaz Farahi, who is with the MIT Media Lab, well-known architecture, fashion designer, critical thinker, working a lot with computers in MIT, all the things you would expect. But right now, the Great Dome at MIT, at night, you will find a series of eyeballs looking up at the sky. So it's Gaze to the Stars, because what she has done, in relatively short order, I might add, is she brought up about 200 people together with AI. They would go into these little booths and they would have a conversation about their dreams, their feelings, their struggles, their longings. And if you think about when you talk about things, often if you're thinking, your eyes will gaze upward, you'll have conversations, you'll think about things. And so this is what's projected onto the Great Dome. So there are these eyes every single night on the dome. And then if you have this app that's been developed by MIT, you can actually scan, you can also understand the words and the phrases and the longings, desires, hopes of the people who made these sort of confessionals with this AI booth.
Why has it gone away so fast? Why is it only like a couple of days? I don't get this.
I don't know. Maybe it's I think it is an extraordinary effort to do that because you have to be able to have the right conditions, you have to be able to project it onto the big dome.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it sounds really cool.
It's wild to be.
Yeah.
So I was crossing over the Mass Ave Bridge and then going down Memorial Drive, and of course that view of the Great Dome with the lawn in front of it is open beyond the Charles and along the Mass Ave Bridge, and so you just see this in the middle of the night. You see this giant eye looking up.
So Jared's driving home, and he gets a call to come to the exhibit at MIT. I'm driving home, and my younger daughter texts and says, "Can you get me cilantro?" That's essentially that, which is a true story. That is the difference. So Jared, did you see Gypsy in New York City?
I did see Gypsy.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, tell us about it, and tell us about the star, who is the star of stars.
This is based on a true story?
Which I didn't know.
I did not know that.
I didn't know it.
This came from the memoirs of Gypsy Rose Lee, the big vaudeville star, the big vaudeville burlesque stripper star, who wrote her memoirs, and in her memoirs emerged the story of her mother, who was, as we now know, the mother of all stage mothers. Well, it's being revived for the 5th time on Broadway right now, and it stars Audra McDonald.
Who is the biggest Broadway star there is.
Of all time.
Yeah.
Winningest, well, not all time. Lots of fans of Ethel Merman and Patti LuPone and Bernadette Peters, all people, by the way, who have played Mama Rose before. But this is a major revival that looks at this stage mother. And so this was written by Arthur Lawrence, the music by Jules Stein. Stephen Sondheim, in his early days, wrote the lyrics. People have described Mama Rose as America's King Lear. Stephen Sondheim described her as Oedipus. She's on this massive journey. But she's a woman who just wants to get her kids into show business.
Yeah.
She wants them to succeed, and you come to understand, or as this play unfolds in this evolution, that this is really about herself, that she never got her way to the stage, and she's trying to do everything through her children. And because you have the brilliance of Audra McDonald, you see this all unravel over the course of this musical until the final number, which is so extraordinary. If you could just buy tickets and go to the last 15 minutes over and over and over again.
All we can afford.
And watch Audra McDonald step out into this arc that comes close to the audience, and you see her just unravel as this, I would argue, this kind of monster, because ultimately, as one of her children has fled her, and her other daughter, who becomes Gypsy Rose Lee, because she was trying to do child acts for all of them, when she realizes, well, here's an opportunity to make money by making my daughter a stripper, she feeds her daughter to the industry. She just offers her up and pushes her forward. And to see that Audra McDonald, as Gypsy, can't understand what she's doing. What she's doing as a horrible mother, she sees none of it. It's just riveting.
And it's there at the end of the summer, even though it's probably unaffordable, but it is there at the end in New York City.
It's an expensive ticket.
Did we go together to see the Neil, what's the guy's name?
Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond show?
Yeah.
Did we go together?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I
Okay,
can't
in any
remember.
case. So I'm sitting, I don't like Neil Diamond. I went to the show anyway, and having said it, it was the most fun show I've been to. And what was the name of the lead actor? Do you remember him? In any case, whatever his name is, he was brilliant. The show was so full of life. The music was far better than when Neil, what's his name again?
Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond sings. Sorry, I forgot what his name is.
No, and I'm trying to remember the actor.
So I'm sitting.
I can't remember.
Look it up. I'm sitting on the aisle, and all of a sudden, before the show starts, it's almost like the waters parted. Someone is walking down the aisle, and you can feel a thing going through the theater, wherever it was. I had no idea what it was. I looked over. It was Audra McDonald, who it turns out is the wife of the lead, whoever he was, who brilliantly played Neil, whatever his name is. And I have almost never in the theater, at least, and you go 1,000 times, never seen a reaction. As she sat, she stood up for 1 second. Her entourage sat down so people could see her. It rippled through the theater
Wow.
in a way that it was really like palpable. It was incredible. And by the way, did you say she's the first black person to play the lead in Gypsy? Yeah.
So there was a lot of, well, can this happen? Because we're talking about casting, and of course it happens, and it becomes this own family story, race included. Because I think when you are a person of color telling this story, this is a universal story. At the end of the day, I cannot believe I can't remember the name of her husband. I think it's Will.
Will, whoever he
Well,
is.
meanwhile, we can play a little sound from.
Oh, we have some?
Yes, we have some sound from Death Becomes Her. This is Bruce Willis and Meryl Streep in the campy.
Well, we're not talking about Death Becomes Her, are we?
We're not?
We're talking about Gypsy.
Well, I thought we were moving on. No?
Oh, we are?
Oh,
Marjorie
sorry.
was moving us on.
I was moving on.
She's marshalling forward
I was
today.
marshalling
We have
forward.
some sound that has nothing to do with what we're talking about,
Okay.
but we do have some sounds.
Do you have anything to say about Gypsy Rose Lee?
Great.
Okay.
One of my favorites, whoever.
I just remember the original one that Natalie Wood played Gypsy Rose Lee in the movie.
She did?
Remember
That's
that?
right.
And Rosalind Russell played her mother.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was very sad because it was very sad. And the young blonde daughter runs off with some guy, and the mother's so upset about it and stuff.
June,
but didn't you
yeah,
tell me
little
she
June.
wound up with quite a successful career too? June, the other daughter, didn't she?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay, I think she did.
This is going
I think
really
she did
well,
too.
I think. Don't you think?
Anyway,
It's really...
we're moving on.
We are?
Yes.
Well, we're almost out of time, and I want to talk about
By the way,
show.
you were on the lucky. I remember that day. You were on the lucky side of the theater because I was on the opposite side of you.
You
so-
were. I do remember
So
now.
I only
was
saw
on
Audra McDonald.
I was
from
on the
afar.
Audra McDonald side.
Okay,
I
then
was.
we won't do that. Forget about Death Becomes Her. Do you just want to do something else?
No, we
Jim,
want
do
to
you
talk about a show
Meow
because
Meow?
exactly.
Well,
So
okay.
tell us what
All
you're
right,
doing today,
okay.
and we'll tell you why we care.
We can talk about Death Becomes Her next time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're going to speak to the stars of Parade, the Tony-winning musical. The Tony-winning musical revival on Broadway is now on tour. This is a story of Leo Frank, who in 1913 in Atlanta was wrongly convicted and ultimately murdered. And this is all based on anti-Semitism. But this really beautiful musical comes to town. We'll speak with James Carson, who's a pianist and filmmaker, about his documentary Cabin Music. He built his cabin just to perfect his music playing, and he was a child prodigy. And then we're going to speak with the cabaret queen, Meow Meow. Who it comes up frequently during these segments on BPR.
Can we remind people? I said it yesterday, but if you weren't listening yesterday, Jared and I go to see Meow Meow a couple of years ago, and we were both nervous because the one thing Jared and I have in common is we hate it when we're called to participate, and Jared hates it as much as I do. So the show starts, and I'm on the aisle because my legs are long, and I'm nervous it's going to happen. Who is the first person in the whole theater who Meow Meow comes over to, Jared?
You.
Me. And what does she want me to do?
She wanted you to unzip her dress.
Exactly. And I have to say, I failed. I did not do it. I was too intimidated. I was too nervous. And for the rest of the show, to make it doubly humiliating, every other person in the whole audience who she went over to ask them to do whatever she wanted to do, what did they do?
They did it.
They did it, exactly. So there you go.
So I can offer that, I think I've shared this, sometimes we have, because of people's schedules, we have to tape interviews in advance.
Oh, so you tape this?
So I've already spoken to Meow Meow.
How was it?
And Meow Meow has something to say about your not unzipping her dress that day.
What'd she say?
Well, you're going to have to tune into the Culture Show to find out.
Are you serious on the show? Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
Don't tell him in advance.
In any case, now I'm even doubly nervous. The husband of Audra McDonald is Will Swenson.
Will Swenson, I know.
And can I be as superficial as Marjorie often is? These are two of the best looking people who have ever walked the planet, not to mention two of the most talented people. Neil, what's his name?
Diamond.
Diamond, thank you. He played Neil
a
Diamond.
beautiful noise.
He was brilliant, a beautiful noise, and Audra McDonald is just incredible.
Okay.
We'll be watching, listening, whatever it is. See you, Jared.
Jared,
Thanks so
thank
much
you
for
very
coming
much.
by.
Meow
Jared
Meow has
Bowen.
to say.
We've been
Can't
speaking
wait,
with
I
GBH
think.
News Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, host of The Culture Show, which airs daily right after us, 89.7 GBH, and appears here on Friday. Not this Friday, though, because the library is closed. Okay, after a quick break, Harvard national security expert Juliette Kayyem on the vote in Greenland. Do they want to be owned by us or not? Climate change hurting our American troops. And finally, somebody really stands up to Trump on DEI. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The Trump administration has targeted parts of the government that could serve as a check on President Trump. For example, the firing of inspectors general across 18 federal agencies.
If one really were serious about limiting wasteful spending, the last people you'd get rid of were the inspectors general. That is precisely their jobs.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, a breakdown of Trump's attacks on the government. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And GM Roth Design Remodeling, dreams delivered, with custom kitchens, bathrooms, and additions. Serving New England for over 39 years. Learn more at GMRoth.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At 1 o'clock today, Phil Eng, the general manager of the T, is kind enough to join us again, answer questions and respond to your comments. That's at 1 o'clock. We are not here on Friday because the library is closed. Please make a note. We're joined now live at the library by Juliette Kayyem. Juliette's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book is The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. Hello, Juliette Kayyem.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for coming
Juliette
out.
Kayyem.
Woo, I
So-
get loose.
We have some updates on Ukraine and a possible
Yeah.
ceasefire. So what do we know?
Look, it could change, but the Ukrainians and the United States agreed to a ceasefire with some sort of conditions. We don't know the specifics yet. It's being what's called presented to the Russians. This was after, of course, the last couple of weeks in which not only was that sort of humiliation of Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, in the Oval Office with J.D. Vance and Donald Trump.
I would argue this humiliation was of Trump and J.D.
Right.
Vance.
They tried to, yeah,
yes.
but he left without this mineral deal that's been discussed. Fast forward, the United States, Trump announces that the surveillance that we've been assisting the Ukrainians with to be able to assess where the Russians are coming in, especially on drones, was going to be ended, as well as other intelligence sharing and then arms shipments. There was a lot of headlines. It was unclear what was happening. And then the Ukrainians 2 days ago sort of went into Russia and did an attack to show that they still had some gumption and some gusto, and that brings everyone to the table in Saudi Arabia. Marco Rubio, the national security advisor for Trump. So it looks like there is some sort of conditional ceasefire, which Putin has been against in the past. So this may be some progress. We just don't know what the details are, and we don't know what we got out of it in terms of a mineral deal.
So the thing I don't understand is now that the United States has pressured Ukraine to do this for a whole variety of reasons, they agreed, including stopping the cybersecurity stuff and the whatever military equipment we were sending, and now they've resumed. If Russia says no, and Donald Trump can never admit that he didn't succeed at something. I don't even mean this as a joke. What does he say? It's Joe Biden's fault? I'm serious. Well, he's saying the economy is. What does he say if Russia doesn't buy in? Which leads me to believe that Russia will buy in.
Yes, I think you have to. I mean, you have to assume that despite Putin saying that he would not come to the table on a ceasefire, that they have some assurances that he will. That's assuming that he's reliable. We just don't know. We don't know what Ukraine would give up. We don't know what Russia will agree to. So we're still in this period, but it could be that Putin will come to the table. This is, I talk about Biden and Trump. I think this was always the strategy, was to some sort of ceasefire in which Ukraine isn't totally happy. The Russians are certainly not totally happy, but that you end this war. This has been a horrible thing for the Ukrainians. It's been a disaster for the Russians. It has been embarrassing. It's been costly. It's been lots of fatalities. They had to bring in troops from North Korea because they were so desperate. So they are looking for an out as well, and it's just whether it's face-saving enough for Putin.
Did either of you watch J.D. Vance's cousin on CNN
Yes,
the other night?
I did. I saw a clip of it.
He's a military veteran. He just came back from Ukraine. He tried to reach out to his cousin to talk to him.
He fought there, didn't he?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
And he says, people in this country don't understand the culture, the Russian culture. He says, if you're a Russian and you attempt to move back from the front line to save your life, your fellow soldiers will kill you, will shoot you and kill you. He says there's a complete lack of understanding in Washington about what we're dealing with the Russians. He's had a complete lack of understanding. I think it's willful ignorance. Yeah. But nevertheless, if you haven't seen it, it's really powerful stuff. You should
tell people
check
what
it
he
out.
thinks of his cousin.
He's not, he likes him as a person, and they grew up together, but he's not a huge fan.
Yeah.
Even though he says he's a Republican-leaning independent. It's worth CNN and Vance, I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Vance. We're talking to Juliette Kayyem.
So we talked about how they have only 31 people in their parliament over there in Greenland. It's kind of a tiny little place. But they did have a vote. There's been a lot of talk. President Trump has been talking about acquiring Greenland, but the Greenlanders have just voted for a party. They threw out the incumbent, the prime minister, and voted for a party that's never held power, but does not want President Trump to take over and own Greenland.
That's exactly right. So, this is like in this weird world that we're living in, like I'm furiously Googling elections in Greenland. I was like, what happened to us? And so this is true. And I think Donald Trump probably saw the polling about 2 days ago when he said basically, we want to support you, we're your friend, and whatever you decide, we understand. It's sort of his way of saying, well, I think I'm not going to get the party that is going to want to be whatever, a territory. It's not even clear what any of it meant. You've got now Greenland, Canada, and Germany. 3 countries with democratic elections in just the last 45 days, or however long, 45 days, that because of the Trump-Elon interest, have basically solidified a victory or completely turned around what was supposed to be a loss for the party that is anti-Trump. So I know my strategy. If I'm the next democratically elected non-MAGA leader, which is have Trump hate you. It is aligning the world. And Canada in particular chose really interesting. It's a businessman. He doesn't speak French, which is
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but he won Quebec. But he comes from the world of banking.
Which is where they're allegedly most sensitive about speaking.
Yes, exactly.
French.
And have had an independence movement.
That's amazing.
He comes out of spent a lot of time in London. He is a very smart financial businessman and is probably going to save Trudeau's party from what looked like an absolute slaughter.
They were 20 points down a couple of months
ago.
And
they're not, I think they're ahead now.
Can I ask, I have a Greenland question, but before, Jimmy Shelder is watching on YouTube. He had an interesting post that we should read. So let me get this straight. Ukraine is ready to come to the table and agree to stop being attacked by Russia. That is essentially...
that's a good one.
That's a good analysis.
Yeah.
The Greenland thing, it's one thing to say we're going to open the Gaza Strip and Trump U.S. will own it. And I think most people understand, even though he seems to be semi-serious about this, he couldn't pull that off. It seems to me that he has total ability, if he announces today we now own Greenland and we're actually sending troops to secure it tomorrow, who would oppose him?
No, I
who
mean,
would stand in his way?
Yeah, no, it's
so he
just,
could take Greenland. I'm serious. I don't mean that as a joke.
Well, I
he
mean,
said yesterday when he was selling Teslas on the front yard.
Yeah. You get a car. You get a car. You get a car. No one's on the Oprah.
But why can't he just do that?
I mean, look, there's going to be a resistance in Greenland. People don't like being invaded. I know it will be.
What military does Greenland
I get
have?
it. I mean, the only thing that is stopping him is that one is hard to explain. You're going to spend military resources on a country that has just voted they're not interested in you. I mean, look, he can do that. It'd be hard to justify. And there'd be probably very little resistance. There would be impossible to have sort of a NATO or EU resistance at this stage.
Well, I'm okay. It just may happen. Okay.
I mean, the thing that I mean, I don't want to say it's benefit. He will move on. And there will be another craziness. So he's already moved on to Canada. So it's like the Canada thing is just like, I don't know why he's so enraged by Canada. There's something personal. And it's so
I would say because
weird.
Trudeau has stood up to him from time to time.
That's
and
right.
he's
And
younger and better looking.
That
and
is
his
his
exactly
wife
right.
kissed him and kissed Trudeau. But the thing that's weird, I just find in this, once again, this like weird world we're living in is that I don't like being an American rooting for the people who are saying, screw you, America. And, whether it's Canada, I woke up this morning to a news alert that the EU is putting on tariffs, which is going to hurt us. And I kind of was like,
aiming at red states.
Yeah.
Aiming at red states.
Yeah, darn straight. And that's not, I don't like that. That's not who I am. I mean, I had believed that like we had an interest that I could justify. Now I see how other countries are behaving towards us, and I can't blame them. You think about Five Eyes and the intelligence agencies, including Israel, saying they're unlikely to share information as they used to.
Because of Tulsi Gabbard?
Because of Tulsi and because it would leak it.
What did they expect?
I know. I mean, that's what I'm saying is that you read this and you're like, of course. And it's going to harm us because there are terror groups and there are people that don't like us. And we have benefited from the intelligence that the Israelis and the Five Eyes, which is the European and Australian entity, and Canadian have helped us. And that's just, it's not good. And I don't like it, but I cannot justify a lot of this behavior. And so you're sort of, this is, people say, what does the resistance look like? Trump 2.0. This is it. I mean, this is what other countries harming us becomes part of the resistance, and harming us, I mean consumers.
Marjorie's got a little good resistance here.
Okay.
Well, this is my favorite story of the day, maybe even the week. You know how the Trump administration is going after colleges and schools, and everybody else saying, get rid of DEI, get rid of DEI.
Yeah.
Well, finally we have somebody that basically is telling them to drop dead. The dean of the Georgetown Law School, when the acting U.S. attorney, Ed Martin, now he's the big federal prosecutor in Washington, he not only is an election denier, but he actually represented January 6th defendants who attacked police officers and injured many of those police officers. So he tells the dean that his office is not going to hire the school's students if it refuses to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And what did the dean tell U.S. Attorney Martin?
I mean, I thought you were going to read from something.
I've got the quotes right here.
I read it. I know it by heart because I loved it this much too.
Go ahead.
And there's so little joy we get out of this. So this is Bill Traynor. He's been I know this world. He's been a long-term law professor. He had worked at the Department of Justice, so he knows what it's like to be a prosecutor, and he's the departing law school dean, which I think matters. I think he's sort of that. Look, if I don't step up, then who else will? And he basically, as someone described it on Twitter, is this is how Georgetown is what? Catholic?
It's a Jesuit.
Jesuit, right. This is how Jesuits say, go to hell, nicely. Right? I mean, it's basically, you are violating every law. You have no authority. I think it opens up with saying as the only acting. I mean, it's Trumpian in it's sort of like, we're not taking any prisoners here, and it's defending the institution. And this is what, we talked about a year ago while I was at Harvard. It's like these institutions better figure out a quick way to be in the arena, because the hiding is not, that strategy is not working. And universities like Georgetown know it. Harvard certainly has to know it. It's already happening
Columbia
here.
obviously
Columbia knows it, right? This isn't about stopping anti-Semitism or DEI. This is about a pure power move on institutions they can't control.
Here's the quote. He cites the First Amendment, and then he says, this is the dean, the constitutional violation behind this threat is clear, as is the attack on the university's mission as a Jesuit Catholic institution founded on the principle that serious and sustained discourse among people of different faiths, cultures, beliefs promotes intellectual, ethical, and spiritual understanding. But here is the kicker line. He closes his letter by writing back to this guy, Martin. We look forward to your confirming that any Georgetown-affiliated candidates for employment with your office will receive full and fair consideration. I just loved it.
It was great. It was great.
And we talked about this before. Can't the Harvards and the Georgetowns and the Stanfords and the Northeasterns and all these schools get together and do a collective? No.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see it. I think you're seeing some run and hide. I'm a parent of a Columbia student, so I'm definitely getting some of the emails, including the acting president there, saying they had nothing to do with this arrest of a Palestinian,
who committed no crime, as far as we know,
except for
taken out of his apartment in New York City and moved to Louisiana. But they didn't tell anybody he was going to Louisiana. His 8-month pregnant wife is wondering where the hell her husband is, and he's in Louisiana.
And apparently, the news that's coming out, the news that's coming out now is that he was definitely starting to feel like there was going to be something against him, and had contacted Columbia about that. And Columbia made it clear they had nothing to do with this. I think there was this is an arrest or detention and deportation or removal, finding a theory of how to do it. The State Department has now landed on that theory. Originally, it was a visa issue, and they realize now you can't kick someone out who's not on a student visa like that. And there's some like esoteric, like 1950 provision in the State Department that gives the Secretary of State an ability to kick someone out on a green card who's a threat or aligning against America. And this is based, so I want to be clear here, this is based solely on speech. There's been no evidence that he has any ties to Hamas, that he has spoken to Hamas, nor, let me just make it clear, have you seen a quote from anyone saying that he supports Hamas. He was in support of the Palestinians who were being killed by Israel and his actions against Hamas. That is protected speech, and it is a legitimate way to confront your country, or a country that you're in. Here he is, that he's on TV now, and I guess he's going to remain in ICE custody. So he lost.
Isn't this unbelievable? And
but his we should say, at least temporarily, his deportation has been stayed by the federal court.
This is the United States of America arresting a person, hauling him out of his apartment, who has committed no crime, who isn't even. They're making this up. The Hamas stuff.
They are making it up, and you can hate. You can hate what he believes in and demand that he's still free.
But
and there are too many people who are being silent on this. And I'm going to go once again to my, this is when people need help, right? The Arab Americans, or the Arabs and the Palestinians and immigrants here, and the behavior of some American Jewish organizations, in particular ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, created to support the First Amendment because it has been used in the past, or free expression has been used in the past to suppress that community, has been doing a victory lap on this. And I literally see their stuff, and I cannot believe it. This was the liberal, progressive organization. And I know I'm standing here picking a particular organization. It is called the Anti-Defamation League for a reason. And it has been shameful. I'm not the only person to say that. There have been a number of people who go, I can't believe this is what you're built for.
I just have to insert here that this is such a load of baloney.
Yes.
Because, Joe Rogan, the famed podcaster, and he's not the only one, but he had on his podcast this Ian Carroll person who says that Israel was responsible for 9/11, and other people are on these podcasts like Theo Vaughn, the ones that Trump went on, spouting anti-Semitic stuff.
Yeah.
They're not going after them, are they?
No.
So it really, to me, it isn't about anti-Semitism.
It's not. I want to
all.
be clear. The president aligns with people who are pro-Nazi. Okay, so we win.
Vance
I mean, honestly,
and Musk.
we win the anti-Semitism debate. There are elements within the pro-Palestinian movement who are anti-Semitic, and we have to be strong and consistent in condemning that behavior. But this is a person who was lawfully here, who was asserting what is provided to people who are here, which is a way to protest through words American conduct and for that matter Israeli conduct, and anti-Semitism is being used to manipulate the Jewish community, Jewish groups, and others to make it think like he's like we found a terrorist, and it's going to be used against Jewish students who support the Palestinians because they are huge parts of the movement, and it is going to be used against a variety. If they get past this, the citizenship issue becomes not relevant.
You're both lawyers. How can this judge say
I don't
this
know.
guy should remain in ICE
I don't
custody?
know because I don't know. Like maybe there's another hearing. I don't know what this ruling is on.
Can we?
I
by
can
the way,
only see developing.
This is incredibly important, but I think we have to step back, and I'll quote myself with Carol Rose from the Civil Liberties Union yesterday. The fact that we all agree, and every legal expert with whom whose stuff I've read or heard says the same thing the three of us say, the fact that they're getting away with this even on an interim basis guarantees that well-meaning people who don't want to end up in Louisiana in a cell by ICE, even if they did nothing wrong, are going to think twice about exercising their First Amendment rights. And it's not because they don't have courage. It's because they have a partner who needs them. It's because they don't want to be in a cell in Louisiana. So Trump is, in my opinion, he's already won this one.
Yeah.
But even if it turns out ultimately Khalil
and
is
what
released.
this also means, we had a massive march, and when Trump was elected, the Women's March, tens of thousands of women.
Hundreds of thousands,
If you can get away with this, then you can go into that march and say, we're going to arrest 100 of these women.
Totally agree with
Take
you.
them to jail in their pussy hats and hold them for 5 days in custody. I mean, this is the United States. I don't understand.
Anti-Semitism has become, the mantra of anti-Semitism has become the new Red Scare. And unless people with divergent viewpoints, and here's what's interesting about this is conservatives are really nervous about this too because they know what this means. What's her name? Laura Ingraham.
Laura Ingraham.
She's. I mean, Chuck Schumer. I don't mean to say he's right. He's not, but he's not someone who stands up and defends people who criticize Israel. I mean, this is. As you said, Jim, Trump has already won, but unless people unify to say this is not, you cannot do this and push back, people will be silenced beforehand. And I'm sure, and this is where organizations that purportedly exist to support minority, I mean, in other words, the unfavored, the unpopular, the difficult to hear viewpoints. That's why we're here.
These silent, we got to go. But these silent university presidents, as Marjorie said, should hold a press conference tomorrow and say we may not agree with the content.
I
of the
have an
speech,
idea.
but we are not going to allow this
What's
to
your
happen.
idea?
My idea?
Yeah.
Quickly.
Tell them none of their children or grandchildren will ever get into
Be legacy admissions.
and just create
That's right.
and then every school adds
We'll
on
pass
so
it
that
along.
all of a sudden, like when
Can't come here.
Ivanka's kids are coming up the pipeline.
Good
That's
to
all
see
they
you.
care about.
Bye, Juliette.
Bye.
Great to
That
see
was
you,
fun.
Juliette.
Okay, bye.
Thank you very
Kayyem.
much.
Hello, Marjorie.
Oh,
You gonna say
We are
something?
moving. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was distracted. We are moving on
What were you
to our.
distracted by?
But I was thinking about what I was going to say in just a couple of minutes
Okay.
about two more things. I haven't got my act together, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
Two more things is next. You're listening to
Good.
Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Hi, I'm Gal Zipelman-Lotan, bringing you GBH Daily. When you subscribe to this newsletter, you'll get the most important news of the day right in your inbox. From trusted and investigative reporting from our GBH newsroom to local stories that start your day on a lighter note, it's all the news that matters to you in one place. You can subscribe at gbh.org/daily to get GBH Daily in your inbox each weekday. That's gbh.org/daily.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Advocates, the human services provider helping individuals facing mental health, substance use, and other life challenges, is now hiring clinicians. Learn more about their supportive culture and open positions at advocates.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At 1 o'clock today, we will be joined by the general manager of the T, Phillip Eng, who, unlike many of his predecessors in that job, actually believes he should talk to the public and answer their questions. He will do that at 1 o'clock. But in the interim, it's time for two more things. This is the part of the show where we fit in a couple of thoughts that didn't fit elsewhere. Marjorie, you go first.
Okay, it's an upside-down world, as we know. You know, the MAGA world used to hate people who drove around in Teslas. Now they're all in with Tesla. They've done a complete 180 because of the king of the MAGAs. That would be Donald Trump, of course. He bought a Model S Tesla yesterday for $80,000. Oh, it was Tuesday. No, yes, it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right there in the White House lawn, and he was next to Elon Musk, who just gave him $100 million. So, you know,
250, 100 million more.
100 million more, that's
yeah.
right. So we're up to 350 million now. So I guess in 350 million, 80,000 is nothing. By the way, if you saw this on TV or online, wherever you watched it,
did.
little X there, that's Elon Musk's kid. I don't know if that's number 12 or 13 or 14 kids. He's got all those kids. Little X is following his father around. His father's totally ignoring him. The kid keeps running up, trying to hold Daddy's hand, hold Daddy's thigh. Nothing. The kid is like 20 or 30 feet. The kid could have been run over by a Tesla. Elon wouldn't even have noticed. But anyway, the great Beth Teitel's got a great column in the Globe today talking about Tesla owners who hate Musk are selling their cars. And she zeroes in like people like this therapist, Rachel Siegel from Newton, who bought the car because she wanted to drive an electric vehicle, but now instead of making her feel good about herself, it represents, you know, Elon Musk with his alleged Nazi salutes and cruel slashing of the government. The problem is, of course, she can't sell her car. She said she's willing to lose even $5,000 for emotional betterment, but she's not able to do it because nobody wants the car. This guy, Charlie Karanis from Citigroup Motor in Cambridge, Jim, he says that he can't sell these cars either, but there's good news for you. What you do is, if you want to sell your car, Charlie says what you do is you can sell it to him and he'll ship it down to places like Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia, where the MAGA Trump people who used to hate Teslas can't buy them fast enough.
Remember the old saying, the only people less popular than politicians are used car salesmen? Now Trump is both.
That's
so
right.
There you go.
He's both.
In any case, here's mine. Yesterday, Marjorie and I were talking to Cara Rose. She's the executive director of the Civil Liberties Union, about bullies and about fighting back, just like we were discussing with Juliette a minute ago, against bullies who more often than not, when challenged, run away. Little did we know that just such a scenario was playing out in Washington before the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Europe as we were speaking. The chair of this committee is a Republican from Texas, Keith Self. The ranking Democrat was actually with us last week, Bill Keating from Massachusetts. Also on the committee is the first openly trans member of Congress, Sarah McBride from Delaware. Here's the back and forth. Please listen carefully between Keating first and the chair of the committee, Self, at this hearing yesterday.
Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America, please?
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I mean, I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
Let me tell you, and just as Cal Rose predicted, the chair of the committee crumbled, banged his gavel after being confronted by Keating, ended the hearing, and ran out of the room like a scared little bully that he is. I just want to say, good for Congressman Keating. In the era of cowardice and anticipatory obedience, may there be more like him. How inspiring was that yesterday?
Great. It was great. And that other guy, what a small
what a small. You are
creep
so right.
of a person. Anyway, okay, we are done with that because we are going to be talking just
on March 20th for our next virtual Beyond the Page event with author Marie Benedict. Bring your questions and uncover the secrets behind her historical fiction, including her most recent novel, The Queens of Crime. Tickets at gbh.org/events.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting David Sedaris live at Symphony Hall on April 6th. The humor writer's observations are marked by his expansive curiosity and biting wit. Tickets at celebrityseries.org. And Johnson & Wales University, now offering 3-year career-focused bachelor's degrees in graphic design, computer science, criminal justice, and hospitality management. More at jwu.edu.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Bradley, head on Boston Public Radio.
rapes to a Roman emperor. Call or text next on the third hour of Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The latest European leader to visit the White House is Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin. This meeting this hour taking place against the backdrop of U.S. trade wars with trading partners. President Trump at the White House a short time ago.
As you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
As of today, the U.S. is imposing 25% tariffs on all aluminum and steel imports. Martin's visit comes ahead of St. Patrick's Day celebrations. Departing from long-standing tradition, Ireland's main opposition party, Sinn Féin, is boycotting over President Trump's handling of the war in Gaza. The U.S. Department of Education is the next agency to face mass layoffs as the Trump administration moves to shutter the agency. The new Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, told Fox News yesterday that the cuts advance a goal of doing away with, quote, bureaucratic bloat. But the president of the National Education Association, Becky Pringle, warns key services that have helped propel generations of students will be diminished or go away.
We know not only will class sizes balloon, but we know that math and arts programs will be slashed. We know that we won't have the funds to feed our kids.
Pringle also notes that special education teachers will no longer have direct access to services provided through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the administration is reaching out to Russia to see if Moscow will agree to a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports Rubio says the Ukrainians are ready for a peace process.
On his way to a G7 meeting in Canada, Rubio told reporters he's trying to get real diplomacy started between Russia and Ukraine.
Here's what we'd like the world to look like in a few days. Neither side is shooting at each other. Not rockets, not missiles, not bullets, nothing, not artillery. The shooting stops, the fighting stops, and the talking starts.
He met in Saudi Arabia with a delegation from Ukraine, which agreed to the idea of a 30-day truce. For its part, the U.S. agreed to resume intelligence sharing with Ukraine. President Trump withheld the support to put pressure on Ukraine to negotiate. Now Rubio says the ball is in Russia's court. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, is in Qatar. He's trying to negotiate a new ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The U.S. is also mediating new talks between Israel and Lebanon. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 84 points at 41,349. The S&P is up 27 points, or nearly 0.5%, and the Nasdaq is now up 1.2%, or more than 200 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The ACLU of Massachusetts is bringing a lawsuit against the Trump administration on behalf of Harvard medical researchers. In the suit filed this afternoon, the researchers claim their articles were removed from a government website that provides information about patient outcomes. Here's more from GBH's Philip Martin.
Research papers published on the Patient Safety Network appear to be the latest targets of the White House. The suit alleges that administration officials are censoring information that falls under the umbrella of what the Trump administration calls gender ideology. One paper removed from the site was about suicide risk and included a single sentence about LGBTQ communities. Another focused on endometriosis and included a sentence about diagnosis in trans and non-gender conforming people.
I was shocked to hear it had been removed.
The author, Dr. Celeste Royce, an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, is a plaintiff in the ACLU-led lawsuit.
It's in the spirit of protecting science, protecting medicine, protecting our rights that I'm participating in this.
The lawsuit was filed in federal district court in Boston. Philip Martin, GBH News, 89.7.
Electric car owners in Worcester are about to lose their free charging privileges at city-owned charging stations. The Telegram and Gazette reports that sometime next month, the city will start charging for the service. And while the cost hasn't yet been set, it will likely fall somewhere around 30 cents per kilowatt hour. 46 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from BetterHelp, committed to making mental well-being a priority and offering support in taking on everything life demands, with therapists available to communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. We have been broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. One more programming note here, actually 2 programming notes. We're not going to be here on Friday because the library is closed, and tomorrow, because of these massive layoffs at the Department of Veterans Affairs, we're going to be joined by Massachusetts Secretary of Veterans Services, Dr. John Santiago, who's a veteran himself, to talk about what these cuts will mean. Hello again, Jim.
Massive layoffs on the federal level and what impact they'll have on Massachusetts. Hi, Marjorie. We're joined now by Phillip Eng. Phil is, of course, the GM of the MBTA for our occasional segment, Ask the MBTA GM. He'll be with us until 1:40 when he's got to catch a train or something. I don't know where, but he's got to go. So you have 40 minutes or 35. If you have a question for the GM, give him a call or a text at 877-301-8970. Or if you're here, and Nicole is here, our colleague right over there, and you have a question you'd like to ask Mr. Eng face-to-face, you can do that. Phil Eng, thank you so much for coming back. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you,
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. So we've been talking for years here about how the T never has enough money, and the legislature never gives them enough money to operate. Now we're looking at federal cuts. What might those federal cuts mean for the T?
Well, right now, all the formula funds, all of the money that's been obligated, we're confident with those projects moving forward. We've been successful in the past pursuing federal dollars, and with programs as they come and go, we'll keep an eye on that. We're going to be really good about making tough decisions on which grants to go after. We have a lot of good work that qualifies, and I have a great team that's working hard on these submissions. Even in robust times, there's never enough to do what we need to do. That's why, I'm really proud of the leadership team that we put together, because we need to be nimble. And we're going to continue to find ways to deliver meaningful results today, deliver capital projects on time, on budget is huge. And that's going to help us make dollars go further. So we're going to monitor that, but we're working very closely with our federal counterparts, the local regional office. The dollars that we've been asking for still continue to be received, and we have good relationships.
So you don't think you're going to be facing shutoffs of this money like everybody else is?
We're keeping an eye on all of the different federal grants that are down the road.
Well, can I stay on that for a second? You have a different position, maybe a more optimistic one, than the governor, who was standing there at 11 from 11 to 12, who is fearful, as you know, I'm sure you know, $16 billion of federal funding is part of our $60 billion budget. And as the governor said, you add $3.5 billion in NIH grants, which are problematic at the moment. And you have a Secretary of Transportation who made a comment a couple of weeks ago that he's going to prioritize federal funding for places depending on marriage and birth rates, and much more, not incredibly at all, those who are in line with the President of the United States on immigration, which means anti-immigrant and pro-deportation, even of people with green cards like Mahmoud Khalil. So how much money do you get from the feds, Phil Eng?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that.
Roughly what percentage kind of thing?
I'll have to get back to you.
Okay,
I don't want. But what I'll say is this: that we've been really focused on using the dollars we have to make sure that we can deliver improved service. And I'll just use an example. When we announced a year and a half ago our capital needs assessment, $24 billion needs of state of good repair, we had over $2.5 billion of need for track in the subways. We actually addressed about 40% of that track in that track improvement program over the last year, and we did that with nowhere near 40% of a $2.4 billion program. So what I'm saying is, we're always going to be challenged, no matter how many dollars we have, to find ways to actually be more efficient and to deliver those results. Federal dollars are important. We count on it. No state can do it without federal dollars. But I can say this, is that we are continuing our strong interactions with our federal counterparts, both in the regional office and in D.C. If those dollars don't come to fruition, we're going to have to figure out how to continue to maintain our existing infrastructure. And the Healey-Driscoll administration's proposed budget for us, the $8 billion in operating, $5 billion using fair share for capital.
Fair share meaning the millionaire's tax.
The millionaire's tax is giving us the ability to at least have that breathing room to be able to build off of the successes. I'm not saying that those dollars aren't important. What I'm saying is we're going to have to be nimble. We're going to have to make tough decisions if certain projects are not fully funded. But that's even in good times when federal dollars are flowing, we're not always guaranteed to win these grants, right? It's a competitive, very competitive nature. And in the back of our minds, we're always thinking, if we don't win this grant or we don't win as much as we've asked for, how do we deliver that?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, and I won't hold you to it. Can you give us a ballpark, though? Because even if you believe, as you clearly do, that obligations where there's an existing commitment will be honored, and I hope you're right, that doesn't mean that new commitments you seek will be given, particularly in a state where there's so much antipathy from the President of the United States. Roughly what percentage? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, Jim.
Okay, all right, that's fine. 877-301-8970 is our number if you want to talk directly to the general manager of the T.
Well, we just want to, before we get to the phone calls, positive note here. What was the poll?
61% think the T is on the so-called right track.
That's
Only
right.
39% think it's on the wrong
And
track.
then you had this piece in the Globe by Shannon Larson talking about people call you the king of Massachusetts and Train Daddy Eng. They called you their personal hero, said you spoke in a very calming voice or do speak in a very calming voice, and one even called you their celebrity crush. So you seem to have captured
That was Marjorie,
the hearts
by the way, who said that.
of many. What's going on here? Is it the calming voice, or what's going on?
I don't know if they pulled my family, maybe, perhaps. But
I'm fine.
Okay.
But, I think these roles, the job I have is to really assure that we have a plan in place and we will pivot if something happens. And that's even when I first came on board, right? How do we get the organization to realize that we can solve problems, that we can move in a different direction, and how do we win back public trust? A lot of it has to do with delivering results, fulfilling commitments, being upfront, and I think that's what we need to do and have been doing. Whether it's here today in this format talking to the public or in my daily commutes, I welcome people coming up and sharing positive stories and even challenging stories because that's the only way we can get better. I hope that, and it sounds like it's resonating. We still have work to do, 39% more that we have to gain favor for. The real thing is I want people to know that public transportation is going to be a sound choice for people to choose and use going forward, that we have made dramatic improvements to date, but we're not done. We know we have so much more to do. We also know that if we don't stay persistent on top of the things that we've been fixing, the building for the future is harder. But we have a commitment to doing both. That's what we are looking to do. Really, how do we meet the needs of today, but build for the future? Because the intent is to make sure our children, their children, have a great place to live, work, and play. And it's a fantastic place, as we all know.
Before we get to the calls, Phillip Eng, GM of the MBTA, what percentage of ridership from pre-COVID days has returned to the T, roughly?
We saw, if I remember correctly, it was about 8% growth over last year, this time of year. And that actually is a very important number because it doesn't sound like a lot. But the fact that last year we had so many outages and closures to do track work, and yet we saw a growth. This past month, we saw, if I remember correctly, it's about a 6% growth over the last month. And
so
I'm
where
seeing
are
it
we?
every day.
What number are
I think we're about 55% if you add up all the system together of pre-pandemic. But that's a continuing growing number because what we've seen is month after month, the ridership is slowly ticking back up.
And first of all, the slow zone thing that you made a commitment to eliminate slow zones. Again, I promise we'll get to you in about 45 seconds. Would be eliminated by the end of the year, and you were very vocal about it and gave a date, which politicians almost never do. I know you're not a politician, but you're sort of a politician, whether you like it or not. I think matters to people, and being present matters to people. But in terms of slow zones, my understanding is the red line is not quite there. Is that true, despite what the goals were?
The red line slow zones were eliminated, like we said. The reason that we are not fully there yet is we're still upgrading the signals. We're still replacing the trains. But I can say this, since we eliminated the speed restrictions, since we did all the hiring for operators, we have increased on red line. If I remember correctly, the number is 32% more trips every day we're running, every weekday. On Green Line, 150 plus more trips every day. I think Blue Line is 50 more trips a day, and Orange was some 80 more trips a day. So we're not only more reliable in the trips, and the trips are now shorter, but we're running more frequent trains. So that really goes to the whole effect of not just what is your travel time, but what is your wait time. And I think that's an important piece. Without the hiring that the Healey-Driscoll administration allowed us with the funding we had and the legislative support, we would not have been able to build up to that. And that's not only hiring on frontline operators that are driving buses and trains, but the workforce, the laborers that are fixing the track, and we're teaching them different things of how to do that work.
It's very important you be complimentary of them when your polling numbers are higher than theirs. That's very
right.
important.
That's
Sean
right.
in Dorchester, you are first, and you're speaking to the general manager of the T, Phillip Eng. Hey there. Sean.
Yes, I'm here.
Well, you're talking
Hi.
to Phil Eng.
Go ahead.
Shoot.
Okay, my question is, I have a T-Ride that I use every day, and the contractor is a real pain in the butt because they keep changing my times every time.
What's your question, Sean, for Phil Eng?
Okay, I'd like to know, is the T-Ride system going to be fixed even with the contractors?
Can you explain what the ride is, Phil, please?
The ride is a power transit system.
Thank you, Sean.
For us. And Sean, you could contact us, or we'll get your contact to specifically talk about your situation.
Don't go away, Sean. We're going to take your contact information. Please stay around. Go ahead.
But I know early on when we were really focused on our workforce, and we made a focus to also ensure that the operators for the ride, those contracts were renegotiated with the contractors that we have providing that for us. Because of that, they've been able to maintain their workforce. The ride actually, on-time performance, has consistently exceeded their goals. If Sean has a specific area, I'd love to hear it, because then maybe we could dive into that. But just as we've done with every other mode, the ride and that workforce has continued to deliver higher than needed goals of the 90% that we charge ourselves with. And we've also been able to respond to calls much quicker than in the past. So we're consistently looking at how to improve that. But Sean, we'll love to get more info.
Sean, stay on hold and we'll get your information. Speaking of frequency, an anonymous texter, Phil Eng, any plans to go back to pre-COVID schedule for the commuter rail? It used to be 25 to 35 minutes between trains at peak times, now an hour or more. And that person is speaking specifically about Middleborough, Lakeville.
So right now, what we have seen with the change in our schedules from pre-COVID is we're running all-day frequent service. And some corridors are running every hour. Some corridors are running every 40 minutes or so. And some corridors are running every 30 minutes. But the difference is it's all day long. So in the past, it was heavy trips during the peak hours in the morning and peak in the afternoons. And that worked in the traditional sense of previous workforce. The way we saw after COVID is people want more flexibility in their schedules. So by having all-day service, both on weekdays and weekends, we actually saw an increase in ridership. We were leading the nation in return to ridership because of that flexibility. So for instance, if you're only working a half a day, in the pre-COVID days, you might have more trains more frequently spaced in that 4-hour window. But then if you wanted to go home, say at noon, we might not be running trains for several hours. The difference is now they're every 30 minutes, 40 minutes or less. And as we electrify the Fairmont line, we're going to be running every 20 minutes in that corridor. We have signal work ongoing on the Worcester corridor that's currently 40 minutes or 45 minutes between trains. We're going to get to 30 minutes between trains. And as we continue to build out the commuter rail system, you will see more subway-like services, the intent of the future of regional rail.
Let's take it away, Marjorie. I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to talk about this. I'm so excited about it. Way back when Bill Well was governor, they started talking about having a commuter rail down to South Coast Rail down to Fall River, New Bedford. That was 1991.
She's from Fall
yeah,
River,
that's
Phil,
right.
if you don't know.
So now, for the first time in 65 years, there will be service to Taunton, Freetown, New Bedford, Middleborough, and Fall River, and it's going to start March 24th. So tell us about this. Is it 12 trips a day, 14 trips a day? Where does it come in Boston? Give us the scoop.
So it comes into South Station, and March 24th is the date that we fully anticipate to be running the first passenger trains. When this all started decades ago, long before I had this role, there was a certain level of service that was promised. There was no weekend service as part of the plan. But just as the text comment that we had about the frequency of trains, we really took a hard look at how do we actually make commuter rail the choice of travel. And if it's not frequent enough, people won't use it. So we actually worked really hard. I'm proud of the operations folks. We're going to be running every weekday, all day long, trains probably every 70 minutes between trains. On weekends, every 120 minutes. And before that, the schedule was much more sparse. But this commitment to all-day frequent service is what we believe will get people using the system. And then to entice them a little bit more, all the way through the end of April, weekends will be free. We want people to try the commuter rail from any of those destinations. And then the parking will be free all week, all the way to the end of April. Every little bit counts, and we want people to really experience what it can be to just sit back, let us do the driving. It literally is a 90-minute trip if you go end to end. And I know how long it could take to drive. I've seen the traffic. It is the best way to go. And there's so much to do here and vice versa. You know, take the train to reverse the morning of the 24th. I'll probably be on the first train out of South Station, headed down to the South Coast Rail Territory.
What is end-to-end? Is it South Station
South Station to New Bedford and Fall River.
Okay.
Yes.
And so it goes to New Bedford first, then it goes to Fall River?
No, there'll be separate trains.
Separate trains,
yes.
okay.
And we'll have shuttle trains between those stations
Okay.
to allow for that frequency.
Marjorie's pretty excited. David in Somerville, you are next on Boston Public Radio with Phil Eng. Welcome.
Hi. My question for the general manager is about the status of the procurement of new Red Line trains. So as you mentioned, the Red Line desperately needs new trains. Just about every day we have problems with the train that leads to delays. And I'm wondering, I've heard you say in the past that the contract with CRRC has been renegotiated and that they're on track to deliver those. But it doesn't feel like we're actually seeing new trains coming online. And more proximally, with the tariffs on steel going into effect, do you anticipate that affecting our ability to procure the new trains?
Great question. Thank you, David.
So, David, since we renegotiated that contract, CRRC and all their subs have been delivering those cars, red and orange cars, on the schedule that has been set. The cars continue to run higher than the contract requires. If I remember correctly, it's 90,000 miles between a failure. They're exceeding, in some cases, or coming close to 200,000 miles between issues. Red line cars, in the previous way it was set up, are now being accelerated. We're coming to the end of getting all of the orange line cars. I believe that will be the latter part of this year. We will have all the red line cars by 2027. And as we continue to get new red line cars, they do have to go through a burn-in period where we continue to run them before we put passengers on. But that is a big focus of this year to get the red line fleet because we do have some of the oldest subway train cars in the country running. So they're on their way. CRRC is on schedule. Regarding the additional tariffs, right now that impacts CRRC themselves. It doesn't impact us and what we renegotiated. But I know this, talking to CRRC leadership, they're committed to delivering these cars. What we're monitoring is also the subs and the material suppliers because they're key to CRRC's success as well.
Are you saying they can't pass? Thank you, David, for your question. They can't pass on or attempt to pass on any of this tariff-initiated costs to you?
Right now, that is not part of the discussion. Those are the things that they're incurring. They're committed to delivering these.
They have a lot of leverage, though, as they have through the years, don't they? When they were in non-compliance, if they say to you, "I want to split the increase in costs from tariffs 50%," what leverage do you have to say no?
Well, right now, contractually, there's no requirement for that. We've already offset a lot of the costs. If you actually go back into the details of the agreement, a lot of the majority of that cost was for the material providers, the subs, because even if they commit, if we lose the subs, if we lose those manufacturers that make the wheels or the components, it doesn't matter which way. This is not just this industry. We're watching all the other things, the bus manufacturers. It's something where we're going to know that their costs will go up, but we're going to have to continue to find ways. These cars are still, in today's prices, a bargain compared to what we would do if we had to go out and get a new procurement. And then it would take at least 6 years till we saw the first car in the new procurement.
Can I return for a second to the positive numbers about right track, wrong track? Obviously, pun not intended, but maybe is, about the T, which to me is staggering because people are negative about everything these days. Part of it you acknowledge is the transparency thing. I thought really effective was you doing those commercials about slow zone elimination. Correct me if I'm wrong. In them, you actually apologized for the problem. Am I right about that in the spots, or am I wrong?
Well, we have a responsibility to the public, and we have a commitment to delivering service. You know, every day if we don't do something right, we've impacted people. So I feel bad for that, and apologies are well-deserved to the people that without them, we don't have a reason for being. Did
you decide to voice these things on your own, or did you communicate? I'm serious about this because I think it was very effective. Did your communications people urge this on you, or did you say, I want to be the voice of the T and tell people directly what's going on?
No, I give a lot of credit to my customer experience lead, Danny Levy, and her team. It's important for the public to know that someone is listening, and I want them to know that I do listen. But at the same time, I have a really strong leadership team, and any one of them wants to be that voice too. Because without them, it doesn't matter what I say up here. They're the ones fulfilling these commitments, and I give it all the way back to the beginning. Governor Healey and the support for us rebuilding this organization. We're not only building it for today, we're looking at building a sustainable organization, because what really, I may have said this once before here, the real test of success is that the organization is successful long after, we hand off the baton.
We're talking to the general manager of the MBTA, Phil Eng. A lot of questions about escalators. One person is complaining that the Alewife escalator is broken. Someone else says the aquarium escalator has been broken for 5 years. I don't know if that's true. As well as the blue line at Bowen escalator is not working. And at Boylston and Symphony and the Green Line, there's neither escalators nor elevators?
So Symphony, that contract is moving forward to actually make that fully accessible. There'll be more information on that, but that is one that we're progressing right now. Boylston is one that is historic. It's not right now in the program, but we are aware that that is one of the Green Line stations that we would like to make accessible. Regarding elevators and escalators, we know how important that is to people using our system. We are focused on, as we make upgrades to stations, to make sure that they're functioning. I brought in a new head of stations, Dennis Varley, who is taking a look at how we've inspected, how we repair, because a lot of them are just as old as some of the other parts of the system. And while we focused a lot last year on track and this year on signals, stations are still something that we're looking at continuously. The Bowen station, I know the challenge of replacing that escalator is beyond repair, and that's where corrective and timely maintenance, when it's due, is important, because once it gets beyond that and you have to replace it, the costs go way up. And the reason that Bowen right now is being discussed of whether or not we spend the dollars to replace that escalator is the station is all part of a discussion and review of a potential future red-blue connector and how that ties in together. So as we are looking at our capital program, and we go back to the initial thing, is how do we make sure the dollars we have deliver results? What I don't want to do is invest in something to only maybe take it out again, not too distant future.
Have you been to every station?
I have not been to every station.
How many did you miss? I'm shocked that you've not been to every station.
But I do ride the system every day, every
day.
Where you come from, East Boston?
I come from East Boston now, yes.
So you're coming in, and what's your route? You start in East Boston, and then where do you go?
I get on the blue. I change at government, or sometimes I change at state, and I can take blue, green or orange.
Okay.
And I'll get off at Chinatown or Boylston. In the nicer weather, and very soon I'll take the ferry, and I'll add a third trip to my travel.
Ferry's great. Let's go to Bonnie in Malden. You're on with Phil Eng, GM of the MBTA. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, General Manager Eng. My question regards fare evasion and the lost revenue on a daily basis. I'm wondering if you're aware of the amount of fare evasion that goes on and what the lost revenue is, and do you have a plan to fix it?
Yes. Unfortunately, fare evasion is not something that just happens here at MBTA. It happens across many transit agencies, and everyone is working on different technologies to do it. We recently hired 16 fare engagement employees. If you go in our system, you'll see them in the green shirts. Those fare engagement, their role is to actually initially educate and engage with our riders in terms of not only paying your fares, but the ability to use the new tap and go that we implemented last year, to take advantage of, if you need, the income eligible program, which reduced by 50% across all of our modes. But ultimately, as they move forward, they will be now validating riders, and they will be validating to see if you've paid your fare. because that is the next step. And what we have seen is wherever those fair engagement folks have interacted with our riders, we're seeing a 30% increase in fare collection and fare payment. We've only have 16 right now, but we're continuing to see how best to use them along with our other frontline staff that engage with riders. The other piece is the technology piece and the new fare payment that we have with the Cubic system delivering the contactless payment. They're going to deliver the devices that allow the fare engagement team to actually interact in a different way to validate tickets. And the other piece is education too. You know, it seems like you know, whether you're or not paying the $2.40, $1.70 on the bus, maybe to some folks it feels like it's not a big deal, but to the MBTA, every single one of those amount to it. But also on the commuter rail, we've been working really hard to make sure that the conductors walking through the trains are verifying and validating, and every month we've seen that go up. And this year we are finally getting to install the gates at South Station and Back Bay that will dramatically increase fare collection on the commuter.
By the way, speaking of, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, someone texted, I can't find it now, about how they put their money into their pass and then they get shoved through the gate by the people behind them trying not to pay. That would be kind of hazardous, I guess, but apparently it happens to this person. Maybe they're a little person, I don't know.
Rich Davey, who's now head of Massport, who used to be the Secretary of Transport, did he talk about hopping the...
Yeah.
I shouldn't indict him before. He's going to be here soon. We'll ask him.
Was Rich hopping the gate himself?
I think he did once, but I think for a good cause. I can't remember.
Like in the Olympics,
you know, speaking of fare collection, Phil Eng, the auditor, Diana Zoglio, here a couple of weeks ago, initiated an audit, released an audit about commuter rail, Keolis, obviously being the operator, talking about problems with fare collection, penalties against Keolis, which is the operator, for inadequate performance. Keolis said there was nothing in the, and I think this is accurate, not that they said this, nothing in the report is true. What's your what was your response to what the auditor had to say about the your end of the action?
So over the last year plus, we've been working with Keolis on fare collection. And then I'll get to what the auditor said as well. And every month we review the validations by the conductors, and every month we've seen that go up and up and up. The part about the auditor, and I welcome audits, that's the way you know, we get held accountable. That's the way that we have checks and balances. But I want to assure everyone that we're doing that ourselves. We are holding ourselves accountable. And with every contract, whether it's the Keolis contract or capital contracts, we're reviewing how we've done it in the past. We're reviewing what we need to do to improve. What I will say also, though, is that when we reviewed the amount of penalties or incentives that the auditor's staff found, you know, we had a different interpretation of the contractual rules. We believe that while we know we could do better, we do believe that we have more accurately collected and issued, whether it's penalties or incentives, not to the numbers that they have. But I welcome what an auditor has to say, because then, as I said, it keeps us on our toes. Yeah. But I also believe that the numbers are not exactly as high as they said.
You know, we mentioned slow zones before, and I would bet that practically everybody in the community knew that slow zone elimination was a high priority, if not the top priority for you as head of the T in 2024. Maybe I've missed it. Is there a comparable thing that you were saying to commuters and would-be commuters is number one priority for Eng at the T in 2025?
It's not going to be felt immediately, but the signals that have long, you know, the signal contract that has been delayed, the red line, orange line signals, they're analog. When I first got here, that contract was stalled. My capital team and the operation teams worked hard to integrate signal upgrades even last year while we were focused on track work. Right now, they're both about 50% complete. We're trying to push really hard to have all the signal upgrades going from analog to digital.
How will that change the lives of the rider?
What it changes is the ability for us as an operator to be able to manage and move trains differently, to make quicker decisions, to be able to route trains more remotely from the operational control center. In some cases, signals require us to go out to the field. That means if there's an incident or a held train, we may have to go out and actually, whether it's 20 minutes, 15 minutes, or longer to get to a site. When we can do things more remotely, it'll be a completely different thing. And then our goal is to have that done before midpoint of next year when we have the World Cup and we have tall ships and we have 250th.
Yikes.
But the other part is stations, accessibility. We want to make sure, and there's a lot of things going on with regards to commuter rail and how we're getting creative, installing mini high platforms. We just did that at Wellesley, where we just opened that up, and we had 3 more that we did in March. The stations, like you mentioned, Symphony, Marjorie, that is coming. It is really about the rider's experience and what they have, and making our system more user friendly. And that's whether it's stations, accessibility, and then improving rail service as we go out to the extremities, because it's not just about how we serve Boston, it's how we serve the greater area, and that's the commitment, not just South Coast Rail, but to actually improve and make the service more frequent, more reliable.
We only have 1 minute left.
We only have 1 minute. We have a couple of quick questions from our texters. Ryan is watching on YouTube, wants to know how he gets one of those snappy gold T-pins. Can they get them on the website? Are those for sale, Phil Eng?
If he runs into me and he makes a comment
Can have
about
yours.
Okay.
I will give it to him.
Okay. And another texter wants to know if you have any political aspirations. Are you going to run for office, preferably president?
I've been asked that before. I think I'm enjoying this role.
You're enjoying this? Okay.
I'm blessed to be here. I'm really happy to be here. And it's a fantastic place. And
What's your favorite you only have a minute. What's your favorite non-T? You're a transplant a couple years ago to take over the T. What's your favorite non-T activity, Phil Eng? Seriously, what do you do?
I like to brew beers, and I like to smoke meats.
You do?
Really? Smoke what?
Meat.
Oh, meats.
So bring them down, my friend.
Really? Like ribs in a smoker kind of thing?
Corned beef.
Oh, cool.
Pastrami. Is that right?
I found an indoor smoker from my apartment. It's fantastic.
That's incredible.
Very exciting.
I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying.
We got it. Phil Eng, I know I speak for our listeners. We really, really appreciate that you give time for people to ask you questions, make comments, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Phil Eng.
Yes, that was Phil Eng, General Manager of the MBTA. We're very grateful he takes the time to come talk to us. Okay, coming up after a quick break, we want to get to the hard-hitting, really big issues of the day today.
It actually does matter, Marjorie.
That's right, and we always do that on Boston Public Radio. That's why we're going to discuss up next how you like your sandwiches cut. Your sandwich preferences, specifically
Don't make light
why
of this.
Jim Browdy insists on having his daily sandwich cut into multiple tiny pieces here at the Boston Public Library. What do you think? Do you like your sandwiches cut in half, in diagonals, in crust, with crust on or crusts off? That is the hard-hitting issue we're going to address next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, with federal funding at risk, cities and towns in Massachusetts are facing uncertainty with local budgets. And Boston's largest housing development for people emerging from homelessness is making its debut. Plus, the Trump administration has targeted aspects of the government that could serve as a check on the president's powers. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And GM Roth Design Remodeling. Dreams delivered. With custom kitchens, bathrooms, and additions. Serving New England for over 39 years. Learn more at gmroth.com. And the Massachusetts Health Connector for Business. New premium value plans can help small business owners find and offer accessible employee health benefits. Learn more at mahealthconnector.org/business.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library. What day is today?
Wednesday.
We're not at the library tomorrow, and we're also not here Friday because the library's closed. For the rest of the show, we're turning to an issue that Marjorie wants to mock, that I've been crusading on for months, if not years, the proper way to cut a sandwich. Now, I know we touched on this the other day, but we're going to do a deeper dive in the next 16 or 17 minutes. Is this straight down the middle, diagonally? But as astute listeners of the show already know, when I'm at the library, I prefer to think a little bit outside the box when it comes to my sandwiches. I was going to say I don't force Jamie to do it. I asked Jamie nicely if he will ask the people at the Newsfeed Cafe to cut my sandwich some days, but at least in 4 individual squares. And if I'm really adventurous, I asked them to give me multiple take-home boxes to put the little baby pieces in for later consumption. I know it is genius. So we want to know what your position is on what direction sandwiches should be cut in, how many pieces, at 877-301-8970. And to get you in the mood, I want to show you how different Marjorie and I am. We're first going to put up a photo. If you're watching either at the library or on live stream, here's how Marjorie got her lunch cut today. How boring is this? This is a Jim sandwich heated from the Newsfeed Cafe.
That's right.
Cut in half like anybody can have done. Okay, let's see next. Here's how I asked that my sandwich be cut. Who is that, Amy, who was kind enough to do that? Amy, thank you very much.
Oh.
Amy cut it. Well, I'm not done
Wait
yet.
a minute. Note the 4 boxes.
Well, you don't know how many pieces you're going to take home. And it makes it almost appetizer-like to the point where, do you know who attempted to take a piece of this before? Which I would have been fine
Phil
with.
Eng?
No, Juliette Kayyem.
Juliette Kayyem.
Jamie slapped her down, didn't allow her. And here is I don't mean slapped her down. I mean stopped her is what I meant. Don't get excited. And finally, here is an AI recreation of what I occasionally do when Marjorie's staff gets it wrong. That is correct. That is once or twice I've been upset about that. We want to know what your sandwich cutting. By the way, let me start with this. Forget my little anal thing with like 6 or 8 pieces. Diagonal, as opposed to straight across, is the way to go. Do you know why? Because the first bite gets you at the corner.
Yes.
And then it gets you to the meat. I don't mean that as a pun either. The bulk of the sandwich much more quickly.
You know, Jim, that's why I'm so grateful I had this job. Because for most of my life, I had been cutting sandwiches in half. Didn't know what I was missing. And then I learned, we discussed this a few years ago.
We did.
You have to go with the diagonals.
Diagonal.
And if you really want to go crazy, and I sometimes do this with my sandwiches for work, you may not have noticed this, Jim, but I do cut them in 4 triangles. 4 little triangles, so I can have my peanut butter and banana, have a little banana in each one of the triangles, and it's really great.
Well, you were all talking no action. We just saw your sandwich today. Why didn't you ask for 4 triangles today?
Because they're busy over there. I'm not going to ask them.
They're our friends.
But in my own house, I can cut them into triangles. And apparently, there's been a lot of scientific study of this whole thing. That they're neater to eat that way. It's a single. You eat the little corner of the triangle, and then if you don't like the crust, you can sort of ignore the crust at the end if you don't want to cut the crust off. Starting from the corners allows for a cleaner bite. It's a neater way to go, 45-degree angle. It's been scientifically studied. There you have it. There it is.
So
however, there was a show on TV. Which show is it? With Hoda and Jenna and Willie Geist. What show are they on? The TV
that's
show?
the Today Show. She's gone, but
they
the Today Show.
do this. This person was on cutting the sandwich in a Y shape.
Mostly people do that with grilled cheeses.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. Why you would do that? But apparently, according to Willie Geist, Hoda and Jenna, that's the way to go.
So here's an anonymous texter. My 7-year-old was a lot like Jim. Very finicky about crust. I cut the sandwich in a Y shape, so that way he will eat more of the sandwich and sometimes even the crust. So that's the answer to your question, okay?
I don't even understand what that means.
Neither do I. 877-301-8970. Let's talk to Mark in Newport about sandwich slicing and where you are in the issue. Hi, Mark.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Excellent, yes.
All right. I'm a general surgeon, and...
you are?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
I am, honestly.
I believe you. Go ahead.
I'm not sure where the controversy is. You can cut it in half. It's your everyday sandwich. You can go, in 4. No problem. I understand the crust issue, although with the economy the way it is, people may be, keeping the crust.
Exactly.
But, it's kind of like, between the two of you, it sounds a little like, who's the a-hole controversy.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Mark. Go ahead.
And, as a general surgeon, I wanted to bring this up because the pejorative use of a-hole in a kind of, pejorative context, I think is unwarranted. I've been working on the GI tract for 25 or more years.
I'm so sorry.
everywhere from the oral cavity to the anal canal.
Okay, fine. Let's leave it
And
at
I
that.
will tell you that the anal canal
Yeah, you
is
said
a
that twice.
far more sophisticated
Okay.
and more reliable.
Now, okay, fine. Enough anal canal talk. Now, Mark.
I was going to ask him as a general surgeon.
Yeah.
I guess you're doing canals, but I mean, if you're cutting into somebody, do you go with the in half, diagonal, or the Y cut? I'm not sure. What do you think in general after all those years?
First, you choose you got your weapon of choice.
Yeah.
You got your 15 blades, your 10 blades,
Okay.
And then depends on how much access you need.
I guess that's true. I guess that's true.
We're only the
Mark,
rules in our contract. It says we can only have someone say anal canal twice on the show, Mark. So sadly, we have to let you go.
Thank you very much.
As great as you were, he's a
that
general
was a
surgeon.
That was a great call. Now we have some good texts here, Jim.
What are they?
Amy in Wheelwright wants to know: does Jim Browdy ask Jamie to chew his sandwiches for him as well?
Rarely. I have rarely done that, and I try not
And
to.
another texter says, Jim, one take-home box should be enough, Mr. Amazon. Don't waste all those cardboard boxes.
By the way, here's an interesting point, even though we're talking sandwiches. John in Beverly says, Jim, when you order a pizza, does it have to be cut into 72 slices? In all seriousness, I do not do an 8-slice pizza. I find it much more satisfying to do like 16 or more. You eat a piece, you have another thin slice, and you feel like you've had more, and you eat less. That's been my experience.
But the other thing, too, is what are you doing? You're eating from the corner with a pizza the same way you are eating with the diagonal
I'm not
sandwiches.
doing a knife and fork. What's a former mayor of New York City? What's the guy's name?
Bill de Blasio?
De Blasio eats with a knife and a fork.
Well, some people do that with pizzas. We have a picture of a Y-cut sandwich, and they're going to put it up for me so I can get the idea of what a Y-cut sandwich is.
Let's see it.
But meanwhile, let's talk to Elizabeth
it's good.
in Natick.
Very helpful.
I haven't seen it.
Neither have I. Go ahead.
Okay, they're going to put it up.
Okay.
Elizabeth in
I
Natick.
don't think so. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
What do you
What's
think?
your deal?
Diagonal? Do you take the crust off? What's your deal?
Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I'm pretty much just exactly like Jim.
Yeah.
I have to say, because it makes me feel like I'm eating more.
Exactly. Meaning you like the multiple segment sandwich. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's the best way.
Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you. It's a bad connection, so I got to let you go. There's a Y-cut.
There's the Y-cut sandwich.
Well, unfortunately, only we're seeing it.
That's really weird.
But can I get back to what Elizabeth said a second ago? What is your favorite kind of food? I can tell you what mine is.
Favorite food?
Appetizers. Those are my favorite. And when you have a sandwich cut, as my sandwich was, into like 12 pieces, you feel like you're doing an appetizer experience.
Oh.
What do you mean, oh?
Okay.
At lunch kind of thing. Okay, well, that really persuaded her. Let's go to Renee.
Well, you have a lot of food issues, Jim. Let's face
it's not
it.
an issue, by the way. I've thought about it. A lot of people don't think about it. They just slice the sandwich. Maybe since a lot of people love sandwiches, you think about it to make it an even more enriching experience.
People ask me what I learned in my many years
doing radio. There it is.
There's the Y-cut sandwich right there.
Yeah.
I will say I learned to switch from cutting in half to
diagonal.
That's
Thanks
right.
to who?
No, it wasn't you. It was a segment we did about this.
Who was it?
With you, I did a segment, but you weren't the person that said it. I think you were quite surprised by the diagonal
I was cutting them diagonally in the womb, Marjorie. Let me tell you. Renee, or in the anal canal in the case of our first caller. Renee and Pepperell, you're next on, whatever you are, on Boston Public Radio. Hi.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie.
How are you?
So, hold on. Sorry. I think my radio's on. There we go.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Sure.
Okay. So I half agree with you, Jim. I think the diagonal cut sandwich is really important.
It is.
To preserve the aesthetics of the sandwich. In fact, because we eat with our eyes, right?
That is brilliant. Keep going. That's brilliant. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and I would not cut it in a lot of pieces as you, Jim, because when most sandwiches are really messy. You have the lettuce, the tomato, all of the different things in the sandwich, and you really need two halves to be able to hold one in a hand so that it doesn't all fall out.
That's a very good point.
That is brilliant. And let me follow up.
Are you going to mention Fitz?
Fritz, not Fitz. Fritz, go ahead.
At the Newsfeed Cafe.
We love Fritz.
He's very concerned. He wants to know why the bacon avocado sandwich requested by Jim
had yesterday, yes.
needed to be cut into 15 little pieces.
It wasn't 15.
Said,
it was 4
Fritz,
little pieces.
all the bacon is falling out. Why would someone want to cut this sandwich this way?
Great, and I respect Fritz's position. He's wrong. Renee, thank you. for your call there, please. Now, Beth is totally disrespectful. She's watching on YouTube. Why don't you read what Beth just wrote to me, Marjorie?
She said, just eat the damn sandwich, Jim. Sheesh.
Exactly.
That's a very good point.
Well,
and here we have another texter that was from Monday who said, I was a customer service rep 10 years ago, cut up the foods I bought for lunch into 1-inch pieces so I could park the food in one side of my mouth and answer the phone. So I guess that way you won't be sounding like you're chewing when you're on the phone with somebody or on the radio when you're chewing, which people don't like either. That might be something to think about, Jim. You can shove the food over the right side of your mouth.
By the way, I read that and I thought it was brilliant until I say, and you've had this experience too, less frequently than I. Occasionally we are eating during our very brief breaks.
I know,
except
I shouldn't
for the news
do that.
breaks.
Shouldn't do that.
I know we shouldn't do it, but sometimes we're hungry. Even if you only have a little piece of a sandwich left, you know that it's almost impossible to speak normally. Even if you have a tiny
it is
little
very
piece
difficult.
of it, and it's really
and
humiliating.
that's why we've been criticized by listeners by rudely speaking.
Well, that's why I have little tiny
food,
pieces so they can be digested rather than your huge halves there.
Okay,
Marjorie.
Todd from Attleboro, what do you think, Todd?
Hello, Todd.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I think the sandwiches are a bit narrowly focused. It's really the bread, so it can be diagonal. What really gets me and what I send back is a round pizza cut into little squares, and I have been specific with Domino's when I do buy with them. No squares. I pick it up, get squares, and I send it back and don't pay for it.
Wow, that is bold. Now, what is it about squares? I think I'm with you, but I'm not sure I understand. What is it about squares that repulse you, Todd?
It's a round pizza. It should be cut into diagonals, and you can, kind of fold it in half when you eat it, so it doesn't kind of fall apart.
That's good.
That's the important thing.
Now, when you return
you
it,
flatbread pizza, it's different.
When you return it to Domino's, I know their customer service is their middle name. How do they react when you say, "I refuse to accept this pizza because it's cut in rectangles"?
Well, I tell them, you look at my order. That's what I told you on the phone when I ordered it. Do not cut it into squares.
Well, Todd, you're a man of principle.
That's my opinion.
No, I love your opinion. You hold it tightly, and I appreciate that. Todd from Attleboro, thank you.
Don't the Italians in Italy, if you go to Italy, aren't the pizza pieces all in squares?
Jamie is Italian and he goes to Italy all the time.
I think
what
they
about
are.
it?
Yeah,
It depends. That is the weakest answer I've ever heard in my life. Either
I've
yes
seen them
or
a
no.
lot. Okay.
But you know what they have? What's the name of the place on Hanover Street that's the most famous place? You pay
Regina's?
almost... No. You pay almost... What is it called? Umberto's, yeah. Where you get the, what is it, arancini, is that what you call it? Which is fabulous, which is cheap. And they do rectangle slices, which means the prior caller obviously could never go, and it is really, really cheap.
Jim, Stephen, a texter, says, forget about having it cut for you. You can buy these great dinosaur plastic things that cut your sandwiches into fun animal shapes.
Oh, wow. Actually, I have that already.
Maybe you should try that. And somebody else texted, they want to know what the sandwich that your mother gave you every night before bed.
Hebrew National, with an extra slice on top.
Now, what was the deal there? Was it crustless? Was it diagonally?
It's funny you say that. I love crust on high-quality bread like we have now. When we were kids, there was no such thing as like high-quality French or sourdough or whatever bread. So I hated, it was probably Sunbeam. I hated the crust. I ate it anyway. But the thing that my mother did, which was quite lovely and loving, is that extra slice of Hebrew National. And the best part of it, as I've said on the air many a time, she gave it to me right before I went to bed, which... It's not exactly how you're supposed to be eating your whatever there.
Buster is really into this.
What does Buster say?
He says, I was told as a little boy that if my girlfriend ever makes me a sandwich and doesn't cut it diagonally, then she doesn't love me.
Wow.
Wow.
Listen to this thoughtful
Buster.
text from Jessica and Ashby. I love this ongoing conversation. This is totally true, and I'm embarrassed I didn't think of it. One thing I never hear talked about on your show in regards to the slicing of sandwiches is how it can be dependent on the filling of this sandwich.
Exactly.
For example, a simple sandwich like a ham and cheese or peanut butter and jelly makes sense to have it cut on the diagonal. It's more aesthetically pleasing, etc. However, a more bulky sandwich, I hate to admit that she is right, with multiple layers of meats, condiments, and vegetables, I would want it cut straight so the edges of the crust help to hold the filling of the sandwich. The type of bread, listen to this woman, the type of bread should be considered. How do you know if a bulky or boule, is that how you say it? I think so. Type bread is cut diagonal or straight. Appreciate you guys for these important conversations. We appreciate you too. Thank you for
Well,
the
that gets back to the delicious avocado and bacon sandwich, which they have here at the
I made a
Newsfeed
mistake.
Cafe.
I made a mistake.
You don't want that cut into a million things.
I had it in
Everything is
fours.
falling out. The
It slid
lettuce,
out.
the
It
tomatoes,
slid
the avocados in pieces. It's a mess.
It was
You want that
horrible.
more contained. Jessica in Ashby, thank you for that brilliant analysis.
Really was. We only have 30 seconds,
Oh,
Joan.
we
And
only
the
have
car, it's
30
yours.
seconds.
Joan,
Hi,
go ahead.
Joan.
No cut sandwiches, Wonder Bread, very fresh. Eat the crust first, because that's the worst part.
Yeah.
And then you eat the doughy center slowly.
Can I tell you, I love your spirit. That is beautiful. And thank you. Great way to end the discussion.
Really, whenever I have toast, I always eat the crust first. And then I kind of squeeze the middle together. And,
How great is toast?
And the butter.
Have we ever
the
done a show
butter
on
kind of
toast?
falls into your mouth. No, but toast is one of my favorite
One
things.
of the finest things that is produced.
And so you have the right kind of bread to go with the toast, but that's very important.
Okay, well, that's it, Marjorie.
Okay, we're done.
We are done.
Yes, we are.
We are
Thank you
done.
very much for people
Thank
that
you.
listened to the show today. Thank you very much for people that came down to the Boston Public Library. You can keep up. We're not going to be back here on Friday because the library is closed. But keep up with us 24/7 wherever our podcast or check out our TikTok page. We have a bunch of new stuff on the TikTok page.
We do.
Yeah, which was really good by our staff member, Nicole, who did a great job. Anyway.
Including a great thing with Mayor Wu from yesterday that is
a great
getting
thing of Mayor Wu.
zillions
It has
of hits.
over 200,000 views right now. Way to go,
Jamie
Nicole.
says tomorrow we're doing a whole hour on toast. Don't be surprised, Jamie. We just might.
Okay. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by Anand Girdadad, who's a really brilliant political writer about what ails us these days, plus Andrew Cabral, former sheriff of Suffolk County, Veterans Services Secretary from Massachusetts, Dr. John Santiago, who's a veteran himself. He's going to talk about what these cuts in the federal government are going to mean for the VA. Also, MIT economist John Gruber on the vexing question of whether President Trump is kind of aiming for a recession, and if so, why would he want that? Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, did the great TikToks, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Tamsin Vidal, our engineer, John LaClaw Parker, Bill Piacitelli. I think John was here today, actually. Was
John,
Bill
he
Piacitelli
was.
here?
No, John was here today.
Okay, that's what I thought.
John
Our
Parker.
executive producer, Jane Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe, who made the